Chapter 754, Saint Ruler Assassins. With the death of the horse driver, Yang Ling was naturally responsible next for driving the carriage. Yang Ling drove the carriage around the corpses of the dozen or so assassins, traveling quickly into the distance. All that was left behind was the splatters of blood everywhere and several corpses, a testimony for everything that had occurred before. In the distance, the people who had gathered to watch all gave way to the carriage, all staring at the person in the carriage with admiration. Clearly, they had witnessed the abilities displayed by Jianchen to consecutively slaughter several powerful Heaven Saint Masters, and all admired the strength Jianchen showed. At this moment, a ripple suddenly surged in the faraway space. An invisible arrow, completely formed from world force, shot with incomparable speed towards the carriage, as if it was fused with the surroundings. Jianchen, who sat cross-legged in the carriage, snapped open his eyes and two gleams of light flashed in his eyes. He was a Saint Ruler himself, so he naturally could feel the invisible world force very clearly. "There's a powerful Saint Ruler trying to assassinate me," Jianchen thought to himself. He was not even perturbed when he faced against the dozen or so assassins before, but in this very moment he finally became stern. What made him think was probably how to escape without exposing his identity. The world force arrow shot towards the carriage silently, while Jianchen, who sat in the carriage, was pained. This was because he could not react in any shape or form currently, as he was a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master and should not have been able to sense world force that could only be controlled by Saint Rulers. In that crucial moment, the surrounding space quickly froze. It caused the invisible arrow that shot towards the carriage to slow down, as if it had entered mud. Its advancing speed was no longer as fast as before. Shortly afterwards, a gray-robed, middle-aged man shot over like a lightning bolt with unbelievable speed, as if he had fused with the surroundings. He stood before the invisible arrow and blocked it with his body. As he clenched his hand, the invisible world force quickly gathered in the man's hand and formed a huge invisible sword. He swung it to receive the incoming arrow. The huge sword collided with the arrow midair. It did not give off an expected boom, but instead the space there trembled violently. The invisible arrow was dispersed and the giant, invisible sword condensed by the man continued into the distance without any decrease in speed, just that its size had shrunk by a portion. Several kilometers away, a black-robed old man floated silently in the air. He stared sternly at the gray-clothed man, and a long bow appeared in his hand shortly afterwards. He quickly drew the bowstring and shot out an invisible arrow at the sword, before fusing with the surrounding space without even looking at the outcome. He turned around and fled into the distance, immediately disappearing. "You offend my Radiant Saint Master Union and you think you can just leave like this? Stay behind." A powerful killing intent flashed across the man's eyes. He immediately began to chase the fleeing old man. Just as the man began his pursuit, another 3 invisible arrows formed from world force shot towards the carriage from the north, south, and east. They were all extremely fast. The middle-aged man's expression changed greatly. He came to a screeching halt in his pursuit for the old man, and turned around and tried to return with all his might to stop the 3 arrows. As the man traveled through the air, he grabbed at the empty space and a huge, invisible sword immediately condensed from world force in his hand. It immediately shot towards the first arrow. At this moment, he had already arrived in the path of the second arrow and threw a fist dazzling with white light, dispersing the second arrow. However, the third arrow had already approached the carriage. The man no longer had any time to stop it and could only watch helplessly as it hit the carriage with lightning speed. In that very moment, a gleam of light flashed across Jianchen, who sat in the carriage. Within his dantian, the chaotic Naiden began to spew chaotic force madly, filling up every corner of his body. It completely activated the extremely powerful defense of the chaotic body. Bang! The third arrow condensed from world force shot into the carriage, landing on Jianchen's chest with great accuracy. With a violent boom, the invisible energy completely destroyed the luxurious carriage, while the energy ripples knocked Yang Ling, who was driving the carriage, flying. He coughed up a lot of blood. As for Jianchen, he shot off like a cannonball, passing through the sturdy walls of several stores and finally stopping several kilometers away. The expensive white robes he wore had already turned into smithereens, revealing a golden silk armor that glowed slightly. The armor was the defensive treasure that was made from primordial god silk. Jian Chen climbed up off the ground in a sorry appearance. He stared in curiosity at the golden mail made from primordial god silk, and the light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. This was because the power from the arrow before was completely blocked by the golden mail. His chaotic body did not play any purpose at all. He had made those preparations before for nothing. Are you okay? A heavy voice sounded from close by. A gray-clothed middle-aged man arrived near Jian Chen, floating 3 meters above the ground. He currently stared at the armor in curiosity. I'm fine. I thank Senior for helping out. Jian Chen clasped his hands at the middle-aged man. The man stared at the golden armor on Jian Chen with flowing eyes for a while, before moving his gaze away to the distance. If you're fine, then that's good. But this assassin from the underworld sect can't be allowed to leave so easily. The man did not pay any more attention to Jian Chen, disappearing in a flash. He pursued the assassins in the distance with an extremely great speed. Not long later, powerful energy ripples exploded in the distance. The middle-aged man had already caught up with the assassins and was currently embroiled in a great fight. At the same time, a large group of people flew over from the distance. Leading them were 2 old men on white clouds, both in white, long robes. They seemed like immortals, and behind them followed 3 middle-aged men in tight clothing. The 5 of them directly traveled towards Jian Chen, before finally descending beside Jian Chen. The 2 old men who lead them was, to no surprise, the President of the Union and the Grand Elder. Yang Yutian greets Master and the Grand Elder. Jian Chen immediately clasped his hands, before casually glancing over the 3 middle-aged men behind the President and the Grand Elder. He could clearly feel that all 3 of them were Saint Rulers. The President, Grand Elder, and the 3 men all stared at Jian Chen's golden armor in wonder. However, they soon shifted their gazes from it, looking towards Jian Chen as per usual. Yang Yutian, are you fine? The President asked gently, filled with concern. I thank Master for showing concern. I'm fine. Jian Chen replied. Afterwards, he quickly glanced over the golden armor he wore and could not help but worry in secret. He did not know whether the President was interested in his armor or not. What wondrous mail! It's actually able to block an attack from a Saint Ruler and have the owner come out unharmed. Looks like blocking the blow from before is not even this mail's limit. I just wonder how powerful its defensive power is. Yang Yutian, with this piece of armor, it seems that normal Saint Rulers would struggle to harm you. And I can also relax a little about your safety. The Grand Elder said in marvel. Soon, his gaze slowly became a glare and he said with a deep voice, but none of those assassins are allowed to leave. At this moment, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. From all 4 cardinal directions, the 4 Saint Ruler assassins were all intercepted by people. Another few figures appeared with a flash, approaching where Jian Chen was with great speed. They arrived at the street very soon. There were a total of 8 people who had come, all of different ages, some old and some young. As soon as the 8 people arrived, they all glanced at Jian Chen first, especially the golden armor Jian Chen wore, which made their eyes glow slightly. Afterwards, the 8 people all clasped their hands at the President, speaking rather politely, I greet the President. In the next moment, the 8 of them all saw the Grand Elder and they all became slightly stunned. One of them immediately said, So it's the Grand Elder. I heard several years ago, the Grand Elder was injured and has always spent the time in the headquarters in treatment, making us all worry. Looking at it now, the Grand Elder is in good health again. What a joyous occasion. The Grand Elder glanced past the 8 of them indifferently and did not go into the matter of him being injured. He said with a slight smile, Who would have thought that the ancestors of the 8 clans have come? Grand Elder, the City of God is managed by our 8 clans. Now that something so big has happened, how can we not come? An old man chuckled, before glancing at Jian Chen. He said with a smile, I heard that a prodigy appeared in the Radiant Saint Master Union, reaching class 6 despite being so young. I believe you must be that person? You really are extraordinary, to receive a blow from a saint ruler as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master and come out unscathed. It's an eye-opener for me. As he spoke, the old man instead constantly stared at the golden armor on Jianchen. A weird light flickered in his eyes, while an unconcealed silver of greed appeared in the depths. Before Jianchen could reply, the Grand Elder said, "Since the peace of the City of God is maintained by you 8 clans, shouldn't you handle those 4 assassins?" The Grand Elder is right. It should be the people of the 8 clans handling it. The speaker was a middle-aged man. As soon as he finished, he flew into the distance. Shortly afterwards, the 7 other people all let to. They split into 4 groups of 2, pursuing the Saint Ruler assassins in 4 different directions. Not long later, the battle that had erupted in the distance became even more intense. Chapter 755. A Sly Senior Brother, 1. The President, Grand Elder and the 3 middle-aged men all looked away from Jianchen and stared at the battle that had erupted in the distance. They're people from the Underworld sect and the Yamahal. Who would have thought that 2 of the 3 great assassination organizations who disappeared 1,000 years ago have come? The Grand Elder said with a deep voice. His complexion was rather overcast. The light in the President's eyes flicked. Looks like the people who invited them have paid quite a large price for the Underworld sect and the Yamahal to both send saint rulers. But both of them have suffered great losses from the Bloodsword sect 1,000 years ago, greatly weakened and almost wiped out. A short 1,000 years is not enough for them to recover much, so there's no need to fear. What really makes me worried is whether the Bloodsword sect is participating or not. If they also participate, the situation will be slightly more serious. As soon as he heard the Bloodsword sect, the Grand Elder's expression also became rather stern. Of the 3 great assassination organizations of the Tianyuan continent, the Yamahal and the Underworld sect focus on hiding their presence, such that it becomes very difficult for people to realize their existence before they kill their unsuspecting target in an instant. As for the Bloodsword sect, they use a special baleful force to fight their opponents. This baleful force is refined from killing and is extremely profound. It can fuse with the void and pass through countless things, able to affect the target's mind even when they're completely prepared, causing them to become disoriented. When it's bad, it can even cause the target to fall into an endless cycle of slaughter, allowing the people of the sect to easily take their lives. In a certain sense, the Bloodsword sect is much more terrifying than the Underworld sect and the Yamahal. The President nodded in agreement. You're right, but the only difference between the Bluesword sect and the other 2 is that they are unable to hide themselves. The distinct features of the baleful force makes it easy to recognize them with a single glance no matter where they go, so when they take a mission, they choose to kill in the daylight, unlike how the other 2 organizations specialize in hiding their presences and killing from the dark, which is impossible to guard against. But the Bloodsword sects already disappeared from the continent for 1,000 years, so they should not appear. Listening to the conversation between the President and the Grand Elder, Jianchen could not help but think of Uncle Xiao from Longevity Valley. This was because he knew that the Uncle Xiao living in seclusion in Longevity Valley was the sect master of the Bluesword sect that had disappeared for 1,000 years. His strength was inestimable. At this moment, the battle far away gradually subsided. A dozen or so figures approached them from all directions. Arriving at the street, Jianchen was standing very soon. The gray-clothed man who had come to help out Jianchen before threw the corpse in his hand onto the floor and said expressionless, "I killed one." The man walked quietly towards the President and stood there. As for his eyes, they stared towards the golden mail on Jianchen, revealing a strange expression in his eyes. This was the first time he had seen a defensive treasure that could block a blow from a saint ruler and come out unscathed. Afterwards, the remaining people all returned there. Of the 4 saint ruler assassins, only one of them was killed, while the rest all escaped. The 8 ancestors of the 8 clans all glanced at Jianchen, while an indescribably light flickered in their eyes. Shortly afterwards, an old man in fiery red robes said to Jianchen, "This must be Brother Yang Yutian. Brother Yang Yutian's received a blow from a saint ruler and has actually come out unharmed. This really has surprised us. Now that I look at it, everything seems to be due to this golden mail." I wonder what is this golden mail that Brother Yang Yutian is wearing, which actually possesses such powerful defensive ability. It's the first time I've seen something like this. This was something Junior had obtained through luck. As for the information regarding this golden mail, Junior knows nothing. Jianchen said calmly and did not reveal too much information. Just as the people of the 8 clans wanted to continue their questions, the president's voice sounded, "Yang Yutian, for you to be able to obtain such a treasure is your luck. Fortunately, there was this treasure protecting you today, otherwise you would have been in danger. Although I've organized for a person to protect you in secret, I never thought that the 2 great assassination organizations would actually send 4 saint rulers to ambush you at the same time, which almost made you fall to their hands. Alright, now that this had all be resolved, come back to the headquarters with me." The president ignored the ancestors of the 8 clans, taking Jian Qin and the heavily injured Yang Ling back to the headquarters. After they left, the complexions of the 8 clan ancestors all became rather overcast. Who would have thought that Yang Yutian actually possesses a defensive treasure, allowing him to withstand a blow from a saint ruler without any injury? With such a treasure, it'll be quite difficult for the people of the underworld sect and the Yamahal to kill him. A middle-aged man said with a deep voice. Of the 4 saint rulers sent by the 2 organizations, 1 is dead and the other 3 are injured. With the way they act, they will definitely just let this slide. We should just tell them about the news that Yang Yutian possesses a defensive treasure and get them to think of ideas. The red-robed old man said calmly, but in the very depths of his eyes hid a sliver of great freed. That golden mail on the Class 6 Radiant Saint Master can actually withstand an attack from a saint ruler and come out unharmed. If I obtain that treasure, wouldn't it just make me even greater? The red-robed old man thought, while the sliver of greed in the depths of his eyes grew stronger. The defense of the golden mail is just too powerful. I've never thought of a treasure that can block attacks from saint rulers. I must find a way to obtain it. At that moment, similar thoughts appeared in the minds of all 8 ancestors, and none of them revealed any indication of it on their faces. The defense of the golden mail was enough to tempt all of them. Under the president's lead, Jianchen returned to the headquarters very soon, before directly flying to the highest floor. Yang Yutian, the assassins of the Yamahal and the underworld sect are best at hiding themselves. Since they've got their eyes on you, they will definitely not let you go, according to the way and method they do things. As for the headquarters, it's a place similar to the public, without any great restrictions for people who enter. It's very easy for the assassins of the 2 organizations to infiltrate, and normal guards are of no use against them. As a result, the place you live right now is no longer safe. It's best if you move to the 5th floor, where the elders of the Radiant Saint Master Union rest and cultivate. Without the invitation from an elder, even core members aren't allowed up there. The Grand Elder said to Jianchen, bearing some concern in his tone. "Yes, Grand Elder." Jianchen clasped his hands in response, displaying an expression of respect. He did not really care if he moved residency or not, as he believed that other than saint rulers, other assassins would not be able to pose a threat no matter what. This was because he possessed the chaotic body that even saint rulers struggled to injure, not to mention heaven saint masters, as well as the 10,000 immunity, so neither poison nor assassination was effective against him. "Yang Yutian, the room beside mine just happens to be empty. You should move in there. This way, if anything happens suddenly, I can make it there in time. Don't go out for this period of time. The underworld sect and the Yamahal probably have planted plenty of people outside," the president said. Afterwards, Jianchen moved from the 3rd floor of the castle to the 5th. As for the president and the Grand Elder, they did not even mention a word of the golden mail, which finally freed Jianchen from his worry. In the blink of an eye, there was only 10 more days until the competition. For that time, Jianchen stayed in his room without going out, passing them peacefully. As for the white tiger, it spent the time fast asleep without waking up. However, Jianchen could clearly feel that the energy in the tiger's body was becoming more and more pure, bit by bit. Today, Jianchen, who sat on the bed, comprehending the radiant arts, moved slightly. He slowly opened his eyes and with the flip of his hand, ancient jade pendant appeared. A weak thought immediately shot out from the pendant and entered the center of Jian Chen's eyebrows. Jian Chen remained silent for a while, before putting the piece of jade away and leaving the room. He walked a few meters, arriving in the room where the president rested. As soon as he went in, he discovered a middle-aged man who seemed to be in his 40s sitting on a chair courteously. To no surprise, the president of the union sat opposite of him. Yang Yutian greets master. Jian Chen bowed towards the president. The president gently placed down his cup of tea and looked at Jian Chen with a smile. Yang Yutian, this is your senior brother, Yun Tian. He's been in seclusion for over a decade and only came out yesterday. Why don't you quickly greet your senior? Jian Chen hurriedly glanced over Yun Tian and clasped his hands. Yang Yutian greets senior brother Yun Tian. Yun Tian raised his head to look at Jian Chen and a warm smile appeared on his face. So this is master's new disciple? Reaching class 6 despite being so young, not bad, much better than me. Oh right, junior brother Yang Yutian, I heard from master yesterday as soon as I came out of seclusion that you have a defensive treasure that can guard against attacks from saint rulers. I wonder if junior can show senior just what treasure it is? Senior Yun Tian, I must apologize. This golden mail never leaves me, and if I want to take it off, it's extremely difficult. I can only show senior Yun Tian some other time. Jian Chen said with a smile. Since it's inconvenient, another day. Yun Tian smiled without caring at all. He paused slightly before continuing. Junior Yang Yutian really is blessed to be able to obtain such a treasure. Though if I had obtained it, I would definitely not wear it myself and instead offer it up to master, because such a treasure can only be used to a greater capacity by an expert like master. It'll make master stronger, as well as repay master for so many years of teaching. Junior Yang Yutian, don't you think so too? Yun Tian looked at Jian Chen with a smile. Hearing that, Jian Chen's complexion darkened slightly. A sliver of coldness flashed across his eyes. What Yun Tian meant was getting Jian Chen to give the golden mail on him to the president. Chapter 756, A Sly Senior Brother, 2. What a crafty senior. He actually wants me to offer up the armor. I just wonder whether it's Yun Tian's own intentions, or the president's intentions. Jian Chen thought quickly, but he did not hurry to speak. Jian Chen knew extremely well how valuable the golden mail was. It was created from the silk spat by the primordial god Silkworm, which was born from the world. It was a unique treasure of the world, something that could not be obtained through luck and not from searching. He could give the piece of armor to his parents or his trusted friends without any hesitation, but he would not just offer it up like this to the president of the Radiant Saint Master Union. Jian Chen hesitated for a little while, hiding the anger in his heart. He said apologetically, Senior, this golden mail saved my life. If it were not for this piece of armor, perhaps Junior would have passed away in the hands of the assassins from the underworld sect and the Yamahal. If I take off this armor, perhaps I would not take another step away from the headquarters. With Senior's knowledge and experience, Senior must know all about how great the assassins from the two organizations are at hiding their presence. It's impossible to guard against them. Yun Tian remained smiling and said neutrally, I've heard about Junior encountering assassins, but Junior does not need to worry. It was purely a coincidence. I believe Master did not anticipate that the two organizations would actually send several saint rulers to handle you, but something like that won't happen a second time. Saying all that, Yun Tian paused slightly before continuing. Also, many people should know about Junior possessing such a treasure now. There'll definitely be greedy people. If saint rulers move against Junior, how will Junior be able to protect the treasure? It'll end up in their hands in the end anyway, and instead bring even more trouble to Junior. Why don't you just give it to Master and have Master keep it for you temporarily? Once Junior becomes strong enough to keep the golden mail, Master can just return it. How does Junior feel about this? Yang Yutian, once you give the armor to Master, I'll borrow it from Master for myself. With this armor, I won't even fear saint rulers if I ever face them. I, Yun Tian, must obtain this golden mail that can even withstand saint ruler attacks. Yun Tian sneered inside and a powerful sliver of greed flashed past the depths of his eyes. Jian Chen looked towards the president and asked calmly, Master, Is this what you would like? If Master wants it, I can have Master keep it for me temporarily. It's fine. With that, Jianchen wanted to see whether it was Yun Tian's own idea, or that the president had instructed his senior to act like that. The president gently sipped at his tea and slowly placed down the cup. He looked at Jianchen and said, Yang Yutian, I don't have much longer, at most 100 years. Or maybe in just a few more years, I'll turn into a pile of dust and disappear with the wind. Also, with my current strength, the amount of people that can harm me in the city of God can be counted on one hand. So, putting your treasured mail with me is just wasting away its capacity. Also, right now you face the combined assassination of the two organizations. If you wear the armor, it can save your life. You don't need to pay any attention to what your seniors said. Master, Yun Tian became impatient and wanted to persuade him, but he stopped when the president raised his hand. The president said, Yun Tian, you don't need to say any more. Your junior is an unprecedented prodigy and will definitely reach a level equal to me, or even break through and reach the legendary Class 8. During this period of time, the safety of your junior is of utmost importance. It's most suitable for your junior to wear the armor. Jianchen relaxed a little and glanced at Yun Tian. Looks like this is all Senior Yun Tian's intentions. He has already become greedy for the armor I possess. Jianchen's mind was full of disdain. Unless it was a sixth heavenly layer saint ruler or above who personally moved out to take things from him, Jianchen did not need to pay heed, let alone Yun Tian, a mere Class 6 radiant saint master. In the city of God, no saint ruler would ever dare to infiltrate the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union, unless the president himself had malicious intentions. Yun Tian's eyes flickered. With what the president had said, he already understood that his plan of using the president to obtain the treasured mail had already failed. Looks like Master views Yang Yutian with great importance. Otherwise, why would he give up on such a treasure? But I'll definitely obtain it. Yun Tian thought. At that moment, the president slowly became stern. Yang Yutian, Yun Tian, there's only a few more days until the competition. I called you two out today is mainly because I want to let you two understand the rules of the competition beforehand so you can make preparations. In a few days, the competition will be held in the Origin Saint artifact of our union. There is a world inside the artifact which hides a great space. All the competitors must live for half a month in it. In that half a month, your space rings will be sealed up by the artifact. You must find and obtain all the food and water you need in that period of time. The top 10 will be determined by how well you fight in the artifact. Inside, you must kill people with your own power. You will obtain all the points of the person you kill. In the end, the 10 people with the greatest number of points will obtain a chance at breaking through to Class 7. So, you are about to be embroiled in an intense battle within the artifact. You must remember to never become soft-hearted. Yun Tian's expression did not change at all. He had already participated many times, so he naturally knew the rules very well. However, Jianchen was unable to stay as calm as Yun Tian. He asked, Master, wouldn't that mean that a lot of Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters die with each time it's held? The president laughed mysteriously, Of course not. Although people enter the artifact with their own bodies, once they encounter any threats to their lives, they will be taken away by the power of the artifact. So there's no need to worry about your life. So no matter how intense the battles inside are for those who compete, it won't endanger your life. Is that so? Jianchen came to an understanding and could not help but think of the competition back at Mercenary City. Compared to the gathering of mercenaries, the competition of the Union seemed much more humane and much safer. All right, I've already said what I need to say. The two of you should leave and make final preparations for the competition in a few days. Yang Yutian, don't go outside during this time. The people of the other two great clans of the empire have all come, as well as they organize people to wait outside the headquarters, probably to look for you when you come out. Don't make contact with them, just in case they suck you into the struggle for power between the three clans. Yes, Master. After Yang Yutian and Yun Tian departed, the president's complexion became much more overcast and cold light flickered in his eyes. He said, The hidden battle between the three clans has already become white-hot. Once the matter of reaching Class 7 has ended, their battle will erupt properly. Tsar family, how can I, Adami, let you successfully unite the Holy Empire? Leaving from the president's place, Jian Qin directly returned to where he stayed. Just when Jian Qin entered the room, Yun Tian also followed behind. He looked at Jian Qin with a smile. Junior, Senior wants to discuss some things with you. With that, Yun Tian did not even wait for Jian Qin's approval, directly entering Jian Qin's room. Jian Qin remained calm and did not care about Yun Tian's impoliteness. He swung his hand and closed the door, walking over to his bed and sat down. He said indifferently, Senior Yun Tian, I wonder why you have come looking for me. Yun Tian sat down in a chair. Only after hesitating slightly did he begin speaking. Junior, Senior wants to borrow your treasured mail for a few days for the upcoming competition. After the competition is over, I'll definitely return it to you, because this time, I have an extremely strong feeling that if I get into the top 10, I'll definitely break through and reach Class 7. If I really do break through, I will definitely not forget about Junior's kindness for lending me the armor. Yun Tian stared fixedly at Jian Qin. A weird smile formed on Jian Qin's face as he stared deeply back at Yun Tian. Senior Yun Tian, I'll come clean. Junior also has an extremely strong feeling that if I get into the top 10, I'll definitely break through and reach Class 7. As a result, I must get into the top 10, while this mail on me is my greatest assurance. This is easy then. Once we enter the artifact, let's work together. With your senior strength as the 8th on the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, we'll both be able to get within the top 10. Yun Tian laughed. Perfect. In the artifact, we'll travel together. That way, there won't be any problems at all in reaching the top 10. Yun Tian began to laugh happily. Junior is right. It's already so close until the competition. Why don't you give the treasured armor to Senior, for Senior to get familiar with it beforehand? Jian Qin's smile became wider, while a sliver of mockery appeared vaguely in his eyes. He said, Senior, leaving the mail with Junior is enough. As long as we travel together, Junior can guarantee you that you will get into the top 10. It's not important whether you have the mail or not. Yun Tian's smile suddenly froze, while his complexion became rather awful. He said with a deep voice, Junior, are you really unwilling to lend this piece of armor to Senior? Only when it is worn by Senior can it have a greater effect. That way, our chance at getting into the top 10 will increase greatly. Senior, I don't know if what you want is the treasured mail or a spot in the top 10. If it's the top 10, then I can guarantee Senior with my strength. If it's for the mail, Senior will definitely be disappointed. Jian Qin's eyes were filled with satire. What Jian Qin had said caused Yun Tian's complexion to become even darker. He knew that his chance at obtaining the mail this time had already hit 0, so he immediately sneered, before turning around and leaving the room. Chapter 757. The space of the Saint Artifact. Yun Tian's departure did not affect Jian Qin at all. Jian Qin stared silently at the gaping door and mumbled to himself, Senior Yun Tian, I hope you do not cross my bottom line. Otherwise, I'll definitely prevent you from placing in the top 10. Towards the competition this time, Jian Qin was filled with confidence. Not only did he gain a better grasp for radiant arts, he even learned the 3 great arts. With just the Judgment Sword, even Heaven Saint Masters struggled to escape, let alone fragile Radiant Saint Masters. At this moment, in a resting area provided for high-class Radiant Saint Masters, the white-robed Yuan Yukai currently stood before a bed, staring blankly at the groups of people that entered and left the castle. There's just a few more days until the competition. I've also secretly contacted a few Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters to work together, but their talent in practicing radiant arts is absolutely crap despite all being Class 6. Even with 4 to 5 of them, they're not as good as me. AI, how do I get into the top 10 with a group like this? Quan Yukai mumbled to himself as he stared outside. Although the people of the 8 clans have invited me to join and work with them, my target is a place in the top 10. If I really do go with the people of the 8 clans, even if I obtain a place, there won't be my share. If I go by myself, no matter how confident I am, I can only run with my tail between my legs when I meet large groups. It's really definitely to get into the top 10. Only if I had Yang Yutian's strength. He slaughtered 30-odd Heaven Saint Master with his radiant arts on the ferry and came out unscathed. He did not even give the assassins a chance to approach him. If someone with such terrifying strength enters the space of the competition, even if he travels alone, he won't face any dangers. Also recently, it's rumored that Yang Yutian has an extremely powerful defensive armor, where even saint rulers struggle to harm him. Isn't it just like giving a ferocious tiger a pair of wings so it can fly? It just makes him even more powerful. Honestly, if I want to easily place in the top 10, I can only follow Yang Yutian. It's a pity that I can't find his whereabouts at all. I haven't left his mark on my communication jade either. If I want to find him, it'll be quite difficult. Whatever, when the competition properly begins, I'll see if I can find him. If I do, I need to follow him no matter what I have say. Within a luxurious manor in the city, several hundred guards clad in pitch-black armor stood straight up, like sculptures that lined the entire estate. All of them radiated with a powerful presence and were actually all Earth Saint Masters. The pitch-black armor they wore was constructed from the extremely valuable tungsten alloy. The defense was extremely powerful, and the price for constructing each suit of armor was shocking. Within the manor, there were also many Heaven Saint Masters, hidden in various places. The arrangements for safety in the manor was as tight as an iron wall. These people from the Kara clan, one of the 3 great clans of the empire as well as a clan in possession of a capital city. This time, a few esteemed Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the Kara clan had been escorted specially to participate in the competition. In the Kara clan's manor, a ruddy old man stood in the center of a luxuriously decorated room staring kindly at the girl who currently sat at the dressing table, attentively grooming herself. The girl wore pink clothes, while her tight clothes perfectly formed an outline of her enchanting body. From the mirror, it could be seen that the girl had an alluring appearance, beauty that could drive countless men mad. Her beauty was filled with nobility, filled with a certain sacredness, giving off an otherworldly presence, like a fairy. She seemed to be around 20 years old, while her light from her bright, phoenix eyes seemed to be filled with intelligence. More importantly, it had a weird charm to it, as if it could seduce people without knowing, causing them to become infatuated before her. First young Miss, a prodigy's recently appeared in the Radiant Saint Master Union. This person is called Yang Yutian. If Miss meets him, Miss must be extra careful, because he is very strong. If you meet him in the Saint Artifact, you must never make him your enemy. Otherwise, he'll become a formidable opponent to Miss. The old man said from 10 meters away. This young lady was the beloved daughter of the previous patriarch of the Kara clan, Kara Liwei. She was an extremely talented Radiant Saint Master, very talented in Radiant Arts too. She had reached Class 6 several decades ago, and was also the strongest person of the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Although Kara Liwei seemed to be 20 years old, her age definitely was much more. A sliver of interest flashed across her eyes. Elder Lu, just who is this Yang Yutian? Is he really as powerful as you've described? Why have I never heard of this person? He's much more powerful, and much more terrifying than Miss has imagined. As soon as they began to talk about Yang Yutian, a strong sliver of amazement appeared in Elder Lu's eyes. He said, "This Yang Yutian is 24 this year and has already become a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Other than this, his talent in Radiant Arts is at an unbelievable level. With just 3 months in the Radiant Saint Tower, he basically grasped all the Radiant Arts and can cast them proficiently. The strength of his arts are much more powerful than the ones cast by regular Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters." Hearing that, a sliver of shock flashed across Kara Liwei's eyes. She said, "He reached Class 6 despite being 24, and even grasped all the Radiant Arts. This Yang Yutian really does have good talent." Not just that. Elder Lu continued, "Other than this, Yang Yutian has grasped the 3 great arts. I heard that a few days ago, Yang Yutian battled against 30-odd Heaven Saint Masters all by himself on a ferry on Fragrance River. His Radiant Saint shield blocked the attack from several Heaven Saint Masters working together, while his Radiance burst forced back many of them. With his Radiant Saint sword, he killed a Heaven Saint Master, before he finally cast Judgment's sword and consecutively slaughtered several of them. Kara Liwei's brushing of her hair slowly came to a stop. Her expression was rather stern. Elder Lu, according to what you said, this Yang Yutian is indeed very strong, at least at a level far beyond me. He fought 30-odd Heaven Saint Masters all by himself, before slaughtering several of them. Elder Lu's expression also became rather stern. Afterwards, something even more shocking occurred. The remaining 20-odd Heaven Saint Masters were all massacred by the forbidden technique cast by Yang Yutian, causing them all to disintegrate on the spot, only leaving behind a pile of dust. What? God's descent? Kara Liwei was greatly shocked, which caused her to pale as a result. This Yang Yutian can even cast God's descent. Is he perhaps Class 7? Elder Lu shook his head. No, he's not Class 7, only Class 6. Also, there's also a rumor recently that Yang Yutian also possesses a defensive treasure that can take a blow from a Saint Ruler and come out unscathed. Doesn't that mean no one below Saint Ruler can harm Yang Yutian? Kara Liwei said with a soft voice. Her expression was extremely solemn. Elder Lu nodded. Indeed, miss. If you meet Yang Yutian and he does indeed have the Saint artifact, you have to be careful and never take him on as an opponent. Also, according to the information I've gained, this Yang Yutian has already fallen out with the Tsar family. This is a great chance for us to pull him in. The light in Kara Liwei's eyes flickered as she mumbled to herself, Yang Yutian, just what sort of person are you to be so outstanding? I really want to see this person. At this moment, a guard called out from outside, reporting to young Miss, the Radiant Saint Master Union President's disciple, Yun Tian, wishes to see you. Hearing that, Kara Liwei's eyes lit up slightly. Let him in. At the same time, in various places of the City of God, the large clans that had come from all over the empire all warned their competing Radiant Saint Masters to never provoke Yang Yutian, even if they had to forfeit. This was because the current Yang Yutian was definitely not someone who could be offended by second-rate clans without a strong backing. In the blink of an eye, the day of the competition arrived. In the morning, a great group of people gathered in the huge square outside the Radiant Saint Master Union headquarters, with a total of a few thousand people. With no exception, all of them wore long, white robes and bore a blue badge that represented Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters on their chest. Although the amount of Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters seemed as plentiful as ants, this was basically all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters on the continent. Even if there were a few who had not come, it was not a great number. Jian Chen stood in his room, looking down through his window at the densely packed crowd. He sighed with emotion. Any one Radiant Saint Master from the crowd was equivalent to a powerful Heaven Saint Master. It was definitely a thrilling scene for thousands of people akin to Heaven Saint Masters to gather together. Jian Chen lowered his head and looked at the communication jade in his hand. Other than for convenient communication between other Radiant Saint Masters, it was also a key to the space in the Saint artifact. At this moment, a powerful light began to glow in the sky. It was the Saint artifact kept at the very top tower of the Union, glowing with a dazzling light, dyeing the surroundings snow white. Even the scorching sun in the sky seemed to become dull before the light of the artifact. Seeing this, Jian Chen knew that the artifact was about to activate, so he quickly picked up the sleeping white tiger from his bed. He had to stay within the artifact for 15 days, so he did not feel safe for leaving the white tiger outside, all by itself. The Saint artifact has already activated, and the competition is about to begin. All competitor, please channel a sliver of Radiant Saint Force into your communication jade. A mighty but familiar voice reverberated in the sky. It was the president of the Union. Jian Chen hugged the white tiger tightly, as he immediately condensed and channeled a sliver of Radiant Saint Force into the communication jade. Immediately, a streak of white light descended from the sky, encasing Jian Chen as he disappeared from the room. Afterwards, more and more streaks of light appeared in the sky, quickly taking away the people in the square. In less than 20 seconds, the several thousand competitors in the square had all disappeared. At that moment, Yun Tian stood in his own room by the window and stared at the dazzling white light in the sky. A sly smile appeared on his lips. Junior, I don't know if you're able to place within the top 10. The future president will definitely be me, Yun Tian. Chapter 758. Forming alliances. Jianchen stood on the bank of a wide lake with the small white tiger in his arms. In the quiet world, all he could hear was the constantly gurgle of flowing water. Jianchen raised his head and looked around. Deep curiosity appeared in his eyes and he mumbled to himself, "Is this the space inside the Saint artifact? It's actually no different from the real world, though the radiant Saint force is several times denser than in the City of God." The space within the artifact had mountains and rivers, and seemed just like a real world. The only thing different was that it did not have an azure sky like the outside world, and was instead a hazy white, as if a thick layer of clouds had shrouded the sky. Jianchen constantly looked around before expanding his presence. It encased a radius of 20 kilometers, but he did not discover a single person at all. Looks like this world in the Saint artifact is huge. Thousands of competitors have entered, yet I can't even find a single one in the radius of 20 kilometers. Jianchen mumbled to himself. Afterwards, he used his presence to have a look at the space ring on his hand, but to his surprise, it was actually sealed by a mysterious power, unable to be used at all. It's indeed just like how the presidents put it. Once you enter the artifact, all space rings are sealed up by the power of the artifact. Not only can you no longer place items into it, you can't even take things out. Jianchen thought. Suddenly, there was a splash in the river behind Jianchen. A huge, half-meter-long fish had shot out of the river water, leaping at Jianchen with extremely fast speed. Its mouth was wide open, revealing its sharp teeth. The fish's eyes flickered with a cold light. Jianchen did not even glance back. He raised his right hand and the surrounding radiant saint force immediately gathered. It condensed into a radiant saint sword instantly, which was shot towards the fish with a swing of his hand. The sword directly shot into the fish's mouth and with a boom, it exploded. The powerful energy wreaked havoc in the fish's mouth, blasting it into pieces. Beautiful flowers, formed from droplets of blood, bloomed in the air. A strong, metallic smell pervaded the air, and when that all happened, a thumb-sized crystal fell on the ground, covered in blood. Jianchen walked over and grabbed a handful of grass to cover up the crystal. He cleaned off the blood and to no surprise, it was a monster core. Jianchen stared at the monster core for a while, before sighing gently. He mumbled to himself, "It's a pity that the space ring doesn't open. I have nowhere to keep this class 4 monster core, so I have to throw it away." Jianchen swung his hand and threw away the monster core. "I need to live here for the next 15 days. During that time, all the food and water must be handled by myself. If I was a normal class 6 Radiant Saint Master, this would definitely form a great problem. Too bad my body as a fighter is strong. Going 15 days without food or water shouldn't affect me much at all." As he spoke, surging radiant saint force gathered violently, quickly forming a white, meter-wide cloud under Jianchen. Jianchen stepped onto the cloud, and it immediately began to rise, carrying him with it. It disappeared into the distance. In another region of the artifact, there was a desolate mountain range. Currently, on the tallest peak, there was a white-robed beauty who stood there proudly. Her robes were slightly small, and they fluttered wildly in the wind along with her long hair. It was the young lady of the Kara clan, Karaliwei. Behind Karaliwei stood 2 quiet, white-robed men. One was an old man in his 70s, and another was a middle-aged man who seemed to be around 40. The 3 of them stood there quickly, like statues. No one said anything. At this moment, a streak of white light appeared in the distance. A handsome middle-aged man on a white cloud flew over, all the way to where the 3 people stood. Afterwards, he clasped his hands courteously to Karaliwei. "I greet the first young miss." With that, the man did not wait for Karaliwei's response and walked behind her, standing along with the other 2 people. Afterwards, more Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of different ages flew over from all directions, one after another. Without any exceptions, they all first clasped their hands towards Karaliwei, before standing behind her silently. Very soon, the initial group of 3 turned into 8, forming a small group. These Radiant Saint Masters were all members of the Kara clan, and after entering the artifact, they contacted each other through special means and gathered at one place. Kara Liwei glanced behind her and said indifferently, "Since everyone is here, let's set off. You must remember to always listen to my instructions in this operation and not go off doing things yourself. The competition this time is different from before. There's someone who may pose an extremely great danger to us." "Yes, miss." The Radiant Saint Masters all called out. Although Kara Liwei was younger than all of them, her strength was ranked first in the 10 Great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, which they all submitted to. Also, Kara Liwei also possessed an extremely great status in the clan. Not only was she the beloved daughter of the previous patriarch, she was also beloved by an ancestor of the clan. A cloud formed from Radiant Saint force gathered under all of the people. All of them rode the cloud and flew into the distance, following Kara Liwei. "Miss Liwei, I've finally found you. Wait for me." Suddenly, a joyful voice appeared in the distance. It was the second disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union President, Yun Tian. He also rode a similar cloud, hurrying over from the distance, catching up with Kara Liwei's group very soon. Kara Liwei stopped and furrowed her eyebrows slightly. She looked at Yun Tian with a sliver of impatience. "Yuntan, Liwei is not a name you should be using. Call me by my full name." Yun Tian stared blankly and could not help but feel a sliver of anger inside. However, his expression remained the same and he said with a smile, "It was me who was impolite before. I hope Miss Kara Liwei can forgive me. Miss Kara Liwei, I wonder if you've considered my proposal a few days ago? Yun Tian, you want our Kara clan to help you handle Yang Yutian. What would the Kara clan get in return?" Kara Liwei gently played around with her hair and said indifferently, "Miss Kara Liwei, you must also know that Yang Yutian's existence greatly obstructs me from becoming president. So, I need to stop him from reaching Class 7. Also, my strength has already reached the peak of Class 6 long ago and I have great confidence in breaking through this time. If I do succeed in reaching Class 7, I'll become president soon after. Afterwards, I, Yun Tian, will represent the Union to form an alliance with your Kara clan, where we stand together. I wonder how Kara Liwei feels?" Yun Tian stared at Kara Liwei with shining eyes. Kara Liwei's eyes brightened slightly. Yun Tian's proposal had indeed interested her. The Radiant Saint Master Union was an organization not any weaker than the 3 great clans, and always remained neutral for so many years, without interfering with the battle between the 3 clans. If the Kara clan could form an alliance with the Radiant Saint Master Union where they stood together, the Kara clan's strength would rapidly skyrocket, overtaking the Tsar family as the greatest clan in the empire. However, Kara Liwei was also a smart person. She did not hot-headedly agree to Yun Tian's proposal, and with a slight thought, she said, "Yun Tian, according to what I know, your master still has a century. With your master there, the position as president will not become yours no matter what. Also, it's not like you don't know about our relationship with the Tsar family. In 100 years when you succeed the current president, our 3 clans would probably be united by the Tsar family already. Miss Kara Liwei does not need to worry. Although my master has said he still has 100 years left, he won't be living for that long. The 3 clans won't be united by the Tsar family either, because my master already knows about the Tsar family's wild ambitions. If the Holy Empire really is united by the Tsar family, their strength will reach a terrifying level. At that time, perhaps even the Radiant Saint Master Union will fall into the hands of the Tsar family. So, my master will definitely not let that happen. Once things really start developing, my master will use his life as a price to cast the forbidden arte against the ancestor of the Tsar family. Once he passes away, I will become president. Although the Grand Elder will still be there, he doesn't care about the position of president at all. Also, with the Grand Elder's friendship with my master, not only will he not compete against me for the position, he'll even support me. As for the vice president, he doesn't have much time either. Also, because of his limited talent, he won't be able to reach master's level even at the end of his life, so he won't be able to become president. As a result, the only person threatens my ascent to president is Yang Yutian. Yun Tian was confident, as if he was completely in control and that only Yang Yutian was the variable. Yun Tian had been a disciple of the president for a long time already, so he knew a lot about the inner workings. If he wanted to become the president of the union, he needed two things. 1. To reach class 7 and 2. To have overwhelming talent. After all, the position as president in the Radiant Saint Master Union could not fall to people without futures. Yun Tian had confidence that he could fulfill the first condition in the competition this time. As for the second condition, he had fulfilled it long ago. He was taken in as a disciple by the president, so how would his talent be ordinary? Kara Liwei hesitated, and after some thought, she said, Yun Tian, I'll go with you to find Yang Yutin. Joy appeared on Yun Tian's face. Please do not become impatient, Miss Kara Liwei. Although I've never personally experienced Yang Yutian's strength, I know he's extremely strong and even possesses an extremely powerful piece of armor. He won't be easy to handle. Although I have confidence that we can take on Yang Yutian with this group, our strength will also greatly decrease, and we might even be taken advantage of. So please wait for a few more days, Miss Kara Liwei. I'll go find some more helpers. After bidding farewell to Kara Liwei, Yun Tian left by himself. He flew on the white cloud in the sky, and an ancient jade pendant appeared in his hand again. A weak thought immediately flew out from the center of his eyebrows into the piece of jade. He was currently using a special method to communicate with other people. Shortly afterwards, a similar, weak thought flew out from the pendant and entered the center of Yun Tian's eyebrows. He put the piece of jade away, changed his direction, and immediately flew away. Chapter 759, Spirit of the Saint Artifact, 1. Within the Saint Artifact, there were currently a dozen or so white-robed people sitting under a huge tree in a forest, resting with their eyes closed. Afterwards, people constantly hurried over from all directions, and soon, the group increased to 20. They were all of different ages, some old and some young. If Jianchen was there, he would definitely find some familiar faces in the group. They were the people that had met Jianchen on the Fragrance River. At this moment, a long, white-haired, sage-like old man slowly opened his eyes. He looked around and said, Since everyone is here, I'll be announcing something as a representative of the Tsar family. In this competition, placing within the top 10 is secondary. We primarily need to find Yang Yutian and stop him from placing within the top 10 no matter what. We can't give him any chance at reaching class 7. And if it's possible, take that treasured mail from him. Make sure you know. Since it's orders from the Grand Elder, we will definitely give it our all to complete this mission. An old man said with a clear voice. He was Master Ho from the Ho clan, one of the 8 great clans. Even though he was the patriarch of the Ho clan, he definitely was not the most authoritative person in the clan. So when he was faced with the orders of the Tsar family Grand Elder, he dared not to abide even more so. The ruddy old man of the Tsar family nodded in satisfaction. Just when he wanted to say something else, his expression changed. He pulled out an ancient jade pendant from his bosom, and a thought immediately flew into the center of his eyebrows. The ruddy old man remained with his eyes closed for a while, before a smile slowly formed on his face. There'll be a special guest who'll be meeting us here in a while. Looks like the certainty for the completion of this mission is only increasing. I think I've already guessed who this special guest is. He must be the second disciple of the president. This Yang Yutian appeared out of nowhere and basically became the strongest Radiant Saint Master below Class 7 with his unprecedented talent. He even learnt the forbidden art. Other than posing as an obstacle to the Tsar family, his appearance also threatens Yun Tian greatly. He's basically stolen Yun Tian's future position. I believe that this Yun Tian's determination to eliminate Yang Yutian is countless times more powerful than the Tsar family's. A wrinkly old man said with a soft voice, while a faint sneer formed on his face. He was the Class 6 Radiant Saint Master of the Fire God clan. The old man of the Tsar family did not say anything more, and instead slowly closed his eyes, waiting quietly for the special guest. An hour later, a streak of white light appeared in the horizon, quickly approaching the area. The 20-odd Radiant Saint Masters resting below the large tree all opened their eyes and looked towards the figure who flew over from the distance. It really is Yun Tian. A deep smile appeared on the old man's face from the Fire God clan. Even around him, several other Radiant Saint Masters smiled oddly. AI, the Radiant Saint Master Union is doomed. The refined middle-aged man from the Chung family, Cheng Jian, sighed in his heart. He thought, the president of the union is about to pass away from old age, while the Tsar family has wild ambitions towards the union. Perhaps Yang Yutian is the only person who can protect the union. If he fails, the union will no longer have the power to resist the Tsar family. Yun Tian slowly descended from the sky. At first, he clasped his hands at all the people with a smile, before looking towards the old man from the Tsar family. Elder Zartilos, you must have guessed why Yun Tian has come. Yun Tian wonders if you're willing to work together with me to face Yang Yutian together? Zartilos agreed to Yun Tian's proposal without a second thought. I'm extremely willing. This time in the Saint Artifact, everyone has one enemy, and that's Yang Yutian. Zartilos personally preferred for Yun Tian to become the future president of the Union over Yang Yutian. Although Yun Tian had decent talent, he was unable to threaten the Tsar family in a short amount of time. Also, Yun Tian was easier to control for the Tsar family. Seeing how straightforwardly the Tsar family agreed to his proposal, Yun Tian was not surprised at all, because he knew that they both had a common enemy. Although it was impossible to kill anyone in this space due to the artifact's powers, making Yang Yutian lose his chance at reaching Class 7 was enough. This was because the next time the artifact would open was in 50 years, and at that time, Yun Tian probably would have already become the president of the Union. Elder Zartilos, in order to face Yang Yutian, Yun Tian has already made plenty of preparations. Miss Kara Liwei of the Kara clan has also agreed to help out. With the three of us working together, no matter how strong Yang Yutian is, he definitely isn't our opponent. Yun Tian said confidently. Yun Tian is indeed impressive to even pull Kara Liwei, that girl, to your side. With this, it'll be impossible for Yang Yutian to escape. A sliver of joy flashed across the elder's eyes. He felt that the mission from the Grand Elder was already becoming easier and easier. Right now, the space in the artifact has only just opened. There's plenty of time, so we don't need to hurry and face Yang Yutian. We should clear out some people in here first, just in case something unexpected happens in the crucial moment. This space really is big. It's probably several times bigger than the territory of the Jessen Kingdom. Jian Chen flew in the sky on a cloud, sighing emotionally as he looked at the ground below. He had already flown for 50 kilometers, but he had yet found another person. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. I've finally found some people, and there's 3 of them. The white cloud under Jian Chen immediately sped up, flying into the distance. Very soon, a wisp of curling smoke appeared before Jian Chen. It was a group of 3 white-robed Radiant Saint Masters, sitting around a fire and roasting the magical beast meat that they had just hunted. The bodies of Radiant Saint Masters were not innately as strong as fighters, even when Class 6. Once they ran out of food and water, they would starve and suffer from thirst just like ordinary people. As a result, the first thing the 3 Radiant Saint Masters did when they entered the artifact was not to find and fight other Radiant Saint Masters for points, but rather to first prepare food while they still had the energy. Jian Chen's arrival was naturally noticed by the 3 people. They immediately stood up from their cross-legged sitting postures, staring at Jian Chen in caution. Jian Chen descended from the sky and landed over 100 meters away from the 3 Radiant Saint Masters. Afterwards, he began striding towards them. The 3 of you really are smart to be roasting meat here. Other than the middle-aged man, the rest of them were old men. Hearing what Jian Chen had said, the middle-aged man chuckled. If there isn't food, how do you survive for 15 days? Sir seems to be all alone. Why not join us? If we move together, there'll be a greater chance at placing within the top 10. The man's gaze towards Jian Chen was still filled with caution. To him, most of those who dared to travel alone possessed extremely great strength, and have at least reached level 3 in Radiant Arts. Jian Chen gently shook his head. I thank Sir's good intentions, but I am used to traveling alone, so I won't be going with the 3 of you. Jian Chen paused slightly before continuing. Also, my intention is to get points. Do you want me to do it personally, or will the three of you forfeit yourselves? The complexions of the three people slightly darkened. Suddenly, their gazes became glares, and without any hesitation, they immediately used Radiant Saint Force to condense a meter-long Radiant Saint Sword before them, pointing the tip at Jian Qin. If he wants to obtain our points, don't blame us for showing no mercy. An old man said with a deep voice and immediately shot his Radiant Saint Sword towards Jian Qin. At the same time, the other two people did not hesitate either, shooting their swords at Jian Qin. Jian Qin's lips curled into a sneer that carried a sliver of disdain. He extended his hand, and with a soft gesture, the surrounding Radiant Saint Force suddenly and immediately began to gather around him at an unbelievable rate. In that very moment, 3 Radiant Saint Swords condensed before him, each rippling with vast energy. The expressions of the 3 people were all overwhelmed by shock. They were also Radiant Saint Masters, so they naturally could clearly feel that the 3 swords condensed by Jian Qin was much stronger than theirs. Also, the speed at which Jian Qin gathered Radiant Saint Force stunned the 3 of them. His radiant arts have reached at least level 4. An old man cried out, while his complexion became extremely ugly. The battle capabilities of Radiant Saint Masters had nothing to do with class, because Radiant Arts was determined by levels, while the arts were the only method in which Radiant Saint Masters could attack. Only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could reach level 5 in Radiant Arts, which was not something Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters could reach. As a result, once a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master reached level 4, he would become a rare expert, as most Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters could only reach level 2 or 3 in Radiant Arts. There were even some people, though very few, who had mediocre talent with Radiant Arts, and were still stuck on level 1. Goddammit, why are we so unlucky? It's only the first day since we entered the artifact, and we've already encountered someone at level 4 in Radiant Arts. The other old man swore in anger. Boom! The 6 Radiant Saint Swords collided and produced a violent sound. The Radiant Saint Sword condensed by the 3 people immediately shattered, turning into balls of Radiant Saint Force and disappearing. Jian Qin's 3 swords did not decrease in power at all, continuing towards the 3 people. In the end, the swords flew towards their chests under their unwilling, shocked gazes. In that very moment, 3 huge 2-meter-wide pillars of light descended from the sky, blocking the swords for them. Afterwards, it disappeared with the 3 of them, only leaving behind 3 thumb-sized balls of light, floating mid-air. Jian Qin knew that they had already been taken away by the power of the artifact and had been removed from the competition. The energy of the artifact would only appear when the person truly was facing death. If they were just injured or heavily wounded, it was not enough for the artifact's energy to appear, so once it did in fact appear, it meant that the person faced death. Jian Qin shook his head and sighed gently. Although they were all Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, equal to Heaven Saint Masters, they clearly haven't fought against people before. They were without any awareness for danger. With the fragile bodies of Radiant Saint Masters, the first thing to do when facing an opponent is not to attack, but to find a way to protect yourself. Otherwise, it doesn't even have to be a Heaven Saint Master, even Earth Saint Masters, or even an experienced Great Saint Master can deal life-threatening damage to you. As a mumbled to himself, Jian Qin had already arrived before the 3 thumb-sized balls of light. He pulled out the ancient jade pendant from his bosom and gently touched it to the lights. Immediately, they disappeared into the jade pendant. Chapter 760, Spirit of the Saint Artifact, 2. After absorbing the 3 thumb-sized balls of light, Jian Qin returned the ancient jade pendant to his bosom and mumbled to himself, I killed 3 people and obtained 3 points. There's at least 4 or 5,000 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters who are competing, so if I want to truly get into the top 10 without any room for worry, I need to kill 500 people and get 500 points. I'll continue my massacre next. The only difference with the gathering of mercenaries is that it's Radiant Saint Masters and not fighters. With a thought, a large amount of Radiant Saint Force quickly condensed into a cloud under him. Just when he wanted to ride the cloud away, he froze. It's the presence of a similar existence. I've actually sensed the presence of something similar to us. In Jian Chen's head, the voices of the sword spirits suddenly appeared. It really is the presence of something similar. It can't be wrong, Master. Where is this place and why is there the presence of something similar to us? Zi Ying's voice appeared in Jian Chen's head once again, bearing with it a tone of disbelief. Aya, there's actually another artifact spirit here. Unbelievable. Why would such a high-level artifact spirit appear in a world like this? This spirit seems to have already reached the immortal level. Qing Suo said in Jian Chen's head in shock. His lark-like voice sounded like the loveliest melody in the world, which caused Jian Chen to become shocked. We're currently inside the space of a saint artifact. Zi Ying, Qing Suo, perhaps this artifact's given birth to a spirit similar to you? Jian Chen was utterly astounded. Who would have thought that when we were asleep, absorbing the energy of the multicolored stone to recover, masters actually entered the space of an artifact? Yes, there indeed exists a spirit, and this spirit is not weak. At least when measured with this world's standards, this spirit is already extremely powerful. The only thing is that because of how it's designed, it can't become an offensive artifact. Looking at it, it seems to be a support artifact. Ziying said. Who would have thought that the saint artifact has actually given birth to a spirit? Quite unexpected. Jian Chen sighed emotionally. At the same time, purple and azure chi appeared from Jian Chen's head. Above his head, it formed a boy and a girl. The boy was handsome, while the girl was pretty. Standing together, they seemed like a natural-born couple. This was not the first time Jian Chen had seen the appearance of Zi Ying and Qing Suo. However, he could clearly feel that Zi Ying and Qing Suo's ethereal bodies had become much more tangible than before. Clearly, they had spent this period of time constantly recovering with the help of the multicolored stone. After Zi Ying and Qing Suo had materialized above Jian Chen, they stared into the distant sky together. Shortly afterwards, Zi Ying gently raised his right hand and surging purple light immediately flowed from his body. It quickly condensed into a purple divine sword in his right hand. The purple sword was 3 meters long and 3 fingers wide. The hazy sword seemed to be covered in a layer of complicated patterning, which formed a weird image, covering the entire sword. It seemed to contain the truths of the world and the mysteries of the universe, giving off a mysterious presence. As soon as the purple sword condensed, it turned into a purple streak of light, flying into the distance at an unbelievable speed. It disappeared in the next moment, completely exceeding the speed of lightning. Jian Chen's pupils constricted suddenly, while he was secretly shocked. The purple sword's speed absolutely stunned him. It was a speed in which no one could dodge. He just struggled to imagine that there was anyone in the world who could dodge the attack of the sword. In the center of the space within the artifact, there was a region isolated by powerful energy. There was a huge palace and current within it. A handsome, middle-aged man in white robes currently sat cross-legged on the ground. Suddenly, the man's eyes snapped open. In the very moment he opened his eyes, the surrounding space began to warp violently. Even the entire palace began to tremble slightly. This is the presence of something similar to me. Has something similar come here? Shock overwhelmed the man's face, before disappearing soon after. In the other region where Jian Chen was, Zi Ying stared at the direction where the purple sword had disappeared off to. He said, although this artifact spirit is quite strong, he's still far from us, unable to sense Qing Suo's or my presence at all. But I've already contacted him. He should arrive soon. Who are you? Where have you come from? As soon as Zi Ying finished talking, a heavy voice appeared out of nowhere. With the voice, a white-robed man appeared, looking down at the three of them. It was as if he was looking at insignificant ants. He was the spirit of the Origins Saint artifact. Within the artifact, he was the life form that ruled over all. He could control all the energy within the artifact as he wished, so he was naturally arrogant. The man's arrogance made Zi Ying furrow his eyebrows slightly. Zi Ying immediately sneered and said in disdain, even a mere immortal-level artifact spirit dares to be so arrogant before me? You're looking to die. An absolute sword chi radiated from Zi Ying. It turned to something like a shapeless storm in the sky, rampaging in the space of the artifact brazenly. The man's expression changed greatly and his cold gaze was instantly replaced with great fear. He quickly retreated, while his gaze toward Ziying was filled with terror. The middle-aged man was the spirit of the saint artifact. His each and every move could influence a change on the space within the artifact. Currently, the entire space trembled violently, as if there was a huge earthquake. Several mountain ranges began to collapse, greatly alarming all the competitors. They had no idea what was going on. In the City of God, there was a huge 10-meter-wide ball of white light at the very peak of the castle headquarters. The white ball was completely condensed from the surrounding radiant saint force, and it was extremely pure. In the center of the ball was the powerful saint artifact that almost all the people in the City of God knew about. The saint artifact was called the Origin Saint Artifact by the people of the Radiant Saint Master Union. It had existed since the ancient times, silently accompanying the Radiant Saint Master Union for countless years. It was kept like this since the very start, without any changes over the years whatsoever. However, at this very moment, the ball of white light that enveloped the artifact began to tremble violently. A golden light could be vaguely seen inside, constantly leaping about, causing the surrounding radiant saint force to become extremely unstable. Even the headquarters of the Union was affected, where the huge castle trembled slightly. It caused a large amount of dust to fall. The trembling of the castle alarmed everyone inside it. Immediately, a large number of white-robed radiant saint masters ran out of the castle, staring at the shaking saint artifact at the very top. No one knew what was happening. At this moment, a dozen or so streaks of white light flew out from the top of the castle. It was the president of the Union and the dozen or so elders, all floating on white clouds and staring at the shaking artifact in shock. Soon afterwards, a few people appeared beside the president without any sound. They all stared sternly at the shaking saint artifact, and along with their gazes, there was deep doubt. None of them understood what was going on before them. They had no idea as to what happened at all. Just what has happened? Why is the saint artifact, something that's never changed before, suddenly trembling? The person who asked this was an extremely old man. His voice was husky and he seemed powerless. If Jianchen was here, he would definitely recognize the old man as the person who used the cloth to wipe the chairs and tables inside the Radiant Saint Tower. Perhaps something happened within the artifact? The president of the Union asked with a deep voice. The light within his eyes flickered, while his complexion varied. No one replied to the president, because none of them were sure about what was going on. The saint artifact had already existed for countless years, and nothing like this had ever occurred. The artifact did not tremble for long, slowly settling down after a few seconds and returning to how it was before. However, the effect it had brought to all the people within the Union was irremovable. Within the saint artifact, the middle-aged man had already retreated to a place 500 meters away. He stared at Ziying in horror, not because of how strong Ziying was, but because he felt a vast pressure that originated from the spirit from Ziying. This pressure caused him to become scared, it caused him to become cowardly, and it even gave him the notion that he could not resist at all. The middle-aged man even felt a misperception, where it seemed as if Ziying only needed a single thought for his spirit to disperse and for his consciousness to disappear, making the Origin Saint artifact return to something without a spirit. The purple-robed young man seemed like a monarch, while he was only a subject. If the monarch wanted the subject to die, the subject could only die. Who are you? Why are you so powerful? The man was extremely shocked, clearly quite terrified too. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Ziying glared at the man and yelled loudly, "Even a mere immortal-level artifact spirit dares to be disrespectful towards me?" With that, an even greater pressure radiated from Ziying's body. It only focused on the spirit, a pressure that only the spirit could feel. The originally pale face of the man became even whiter. He stumbled a few steps backwards, while his entire body began to shake. The pressure had already deeply infiltrated his spirit, causing him to feel terror in the very depths of his spirit. He felt like his spiritual body was about to collapse. Meanwhile, in the man's head, a few extremely unfamiliar images appeared. He saw two divine swords, one purple and one azure, standing erect between the earth and the heavens, radiating with dazzling light. They split the heavens and cut open the earth, destroying plenty of stars and slaughtering countless immortals. The corpses left behind radiated with a powerful pressure, floating about in the infinite starry sky. To the man, each corpse was an existence unimaginable in strength. Just a casual wave of their hand possessed the power to destroy worlds. Even the droplets of golden blood, floating in the void, seemed to possess a great energy, capable of easily wiping himself out. Chapter 761. The Submission of the Artifact Spirit Plop. Suddenly, the middle-aged man fell onto his knees. He began to beg Ziying on his arms, "Overlord, please spare me, please spare me." This one blindly offended the Overlord. "Overlord, please be merciful and spare this one's life." At that moment, the man had already understood. The purple-robed young man transformed from the sword spirit was once an unbelievably powerful existence, a level of power beyond his imagination. Before him, he did not even have the right to help Ziying wear shoes, so he most definitely could not offend him. Ziying slowly retracted his might and stared coldly at the man. "Get up. I'll let you go this time. It won't happen a second time." "Thank you, Overlord, thank you for sparing me." The man behaved as if he had gained amnesty, slowly rising from the ground. In his head, he could not help but think of the unfamiliar images that had suddenly appeared before. He knew that everything was real, and knew even better that the two purple and azure divine swords that seemed to split the heavens were the couple in azure and purple robes before him. This caused man's terror and fear for the sword spirits to reach an absolute limit. Even though he was in his own world, even though he was something similar to a god in this world, the man did not dare to let the notion of resisting cross his mind in front of the two sword spirits. Even though he knew that the two sword spirits had already become much weaker than before and no longer his opponent, he did not dare to show any resistance at all. All there was in his mind was extremely powerful dread and great fear. Ziying stared at the trembling man for a while, before losing interest soon after. He turned around to Qing Suo, who was in an azure dress. His eyes were filled with a soft light and he said, "Qing Suo, let's return. Master will let you handle the rest of it." "Yes." Qing Suo nodded slightly. Afterwards, she turned into a ray of light along with Ziying at the same time, disappearing into Jian Chen's head. Discovering an artifact spirit here earlier had indeed surprised them, but that was only surprise. With their past statuses and strength, they completely looked down on the spirit of the origin artifact. Hearing Ziying say return, the man finally relaxed from his extremely anxious state. However, before he could become delighted, it scared the man greatly once again when he heard Ziying say, "Master." Even his body began to tremble greatly, his gaze towards Jian Chen filled with dread. He can become the master of the two peerless divine swords. He mustn't be simple. I can't offend him no matter what. Even if he's weak, I can't afford to underestimate him at all. The man warned himself in his mind. He had already become completely terrified from the image that had appeared in his mind. All those that were related to the sword spirits had already entered his list of people he could not afford to offend. The man glanced at Jian Chen in some dread, before carefully walking up. He made a low bow to Jian Chen and said extremely courteously, "This one greets the Overlord." Jian Chen observed the artifact spirit with a weird gaze, but inside, he found that it was quite funny by the way the spirit referred to him. However, Jian Chen did go ahead and rectify it. Instead, he asked, "What do I call you?" Responding to the Overlord, "This one does not have a name yet, but they all call me Lord Artifact Spirit." The man said, "Them." A sliver of interest flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. "Who are you referring to by they?" Responding to the Overlord, "They are the presidents of the Radiant Saint Master Union." The man said. Jian Chen pondered for a while and did not continue with the topic of conversation. He stared brightly at the man and said, "My purpose of coming this time is to obtain origin energy to reach Class 7 as a Radiant Saint Master. Since you're the artifact spirit, You must be able to control the origin energy. Hearing that, the sliver of a troubled expression appeared on the man's face. He said, "The Overlord may not know that all the origin energy in the Saint artifact is sealed up by a powerful barrier. Although this one is in fact the artifact spirit and can indeed control everything within this space, this barrier has already existed for a length that I don't even know, and is extremely tough. Even if this one uses all the energy within the artifact space, this one is unable to break this barrier." Hearing that, Jianchen furrowed his eyebrows and frowned slightly. Perhaps he realized that Jianchen was unhappy. The man hurriedly followed up, "Overlord, although this one is unable to break through the barrier, it opens up once every 50 years. There's only one more year before it opens the next time. When it does open, the Overlord can absorb the origin energy." Hearing that, Jianchen sighed secretly inside. It seemed that if he wanted to reach Class 7, he needed to follow the rules of the Union and take it a step at a time. Jianchen bid farewell to the middle-aged man and departed on a white cloud. He flew into the distance, continuing to find competitors to obtain points. 50 kilometers in front of Jianchen, there were 5 white-robed radiant Saint Masters on a cloud, flying towards Jianchen. Of the 5 people, 2 were middle-aged men while the other 3 were old men. They were all from clans that originated from a king city in the Holy Empire. This time, we'll probably be able to even fight one of the 10 great radiant Saint Masters with the 5 of us working together. Even if we can't win, fleeing isn't a problem. Once we meet lone travelers or smaller groups, move immediately and take all their points from them. We need to try as hard as we can to push one of us into the top 10. The speaker was an old man, who was very confident in the strength of the people with him. This was because all 5 of them had reached level 3 in Radiant Arts, and if they worked together, there was no problem even if they encountered experts at level 4. I hope this happens. But this space inside the artifact is just too big. We've already traveled for over 20 kilometers, and we haven't even found a single person. One of the middle-aged men was unhappy, which he grumbled. Look, isn't there a person in front?" Suddenly, the other middle-aged man revealed an expression of joy. He cried out with his hand pointed into the distance. Hearing that, all the people raised their heads and looked in front. Before them, there was a white streak of light, quickly approaching where they were. With this, the 5 people who were lamenting over the fact that they could not find anyone earlier immediately became happy. One of the old men hurriedly said, "There's only one person. We can't let this fish escape. Everyone hurry and encircle him first so he can't run away." The 5 of them did not hesitate at all, immediately speeding up into the distance, rushing at the Radiant Saint Master head-on. The lone person clearly discovered them, but there was no change to the speed at which he advanced. He remained on his original path, flying over from the distance at a speed not too fast or slow. Very soon, the group of 5 surrounded the lone Radiant Saint Master. At the same time, a layer of Radiant Saint armor condensed from Radiant Saint force appeared on them, tightly wrapping them inside it, only leaving a space for their eyes. Jianchen stared at the 5 people around him calmly, and a cold smile formed on his face. He said, "Sirs, what are you trying to do?" "What are we trying to do?" "Huh, what do you think we're trying to do?" "Brat, I won't bother to say all that nonsense. I'd just advise you to forfeit here. It'll save you some physical pain." An old man stared at Jianchen coldly, laughing aloud. "Overlord, do you want this one to give these people that dare to offend you a solid punishment?" Jianchen heard the artifact spirit's voice, which carried some anger. The 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters around Jianchen would never think that not only did they offend someone they could not afford to offend with what they had done, they had even angered the spirit of the Origin Saint artifact. Jianchen shook his head gently and mumbled in a way as if he was talking to himself, "No need. You don't need to interfere with what I do, just do what you need to do. In a while, if they face death, send them out immediately." "Yes, Overlord." The artifact spirit replied courteously. He went with exactly what Jianchen said, as if Jianchen was his master. "Brat, what are you mumbling? Have you properly thought over what I said? If you don't forfeit in 3 seconds, don't blame us for being impolite." A middle-aged man said rather impatiently. If it were not for the fact that they needed to save as much energy as possible, the 5 of them would have moved against Jianchen long ago. Jianchen stared at the people around him with a sneer and said coldly, "Even you want to try get me, Yang Yutian, to forfeit? A fool's dream." Jianchen grabbed at the empty space and in an extremely short amount of time, he condensed 5 radiant saint swords, which radiated with powerful energy ripples. "What? You're Yang Yutian?" The 5 people's expressions changed greatly, staring at Jianchen disbelief, which carried a great amount of shock along with it. The name Yang Yutian was like thunder to their ears. Currently in all of City of God, the name Yang Yutian was not unfamiliar to all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, because he was a miraculous personage among the Radiant Saint Masters. Not only did he reach Class 6 at an age of 24, his control of radiant arts had already reached an extremely great level. On Fragrance River outside the City of God, he once slaughtered over 30 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself, stunning all of the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Jianchen did not give them a chance to regret or beg for forgiveness. With a fierce flash of light through his eyes, the 5 Radiant Saint sword turned into streaks of white light, shooting towards the 5 people. The 5 people were quite frightened by the name Jianchen had mentioned. They had become slightly lost, so the Radiant Saint sword landed firmly on their chests. Spurt! All 5 of them spat out a mouth of blood, knocked backwards by the momentum of the swords. Their faces had already paled. Although they had the Radiant Saint armor, it was already covered in web-like cracks on their chest. In the end, with a bang, the armor on the 5 of them all shattered from Jianchen's blow. Chapter 762. Encountering a beast horde, the 5 Radiant Saint Masters were knocked flying backwards as they spurted with blood from Jianchen's attack, while the clouds that supported them in the sky disappeared. It caused them to fall along a 50-meter-long parabolic route, landing heavily on the ground. The 5 Radiant Saint Masters did not have bodies as tough as fighters. Falling from over 30 meters high, even if they did not die, almost all of their bones were broken. The great pain even sucked away their strength to talk, and their pale faces all became a reddish-purple from the fall. It was unbearable. In their whole lives, they had never experienced such pain. Jianchen stared coldly at the 5 Radiant Saint Masters on the floor in great pain, but he did not feel any pity at all. With a thought, another 5 Radiant Saint swords condensed in his hand, and with a swing, the 5 swords turned into a streak of silvery white light, flying towards the 5 of them like lightning bolts. This time, the 5 people no longer had any power to resist. They could only watch the 5 swords strike their chests helplessly. In that very moment, they had never felt death so close, even though they were inside the artifact and could not die. However, when they faced it personally like this, they still felt a dread of passing away. The Radiant Saint swords advanced like a hot knife through butter, mercilessly piercing the 5 of them in the chest. However, just before the sharp tip of the swords had completely penetrated their bodies, 5 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, enveloping their bodies and disappearing with them, while the swords under Jianchen's control were directly crushed by the energy of the pillars of light in the very moment they had appeared. In the blink of an eye, the 5 people disappeared at the edge of death, only leaving behind 5 thumb-sized specks of light floating midair. This artifact spirit really is strong. He's actually able to save these people in such a crucial moment, and even the timing is perfect. I wonder how strong this artifact spirit is in this space. Jianchen thought as he looked at where the 5 people had disappeared. His opinion of the artifact spirit had improved once again. Afterwards, Jianchen arrived before the 5 specks of floating light. He pulled out the ancient jade pendant from his bosom and absorbed all the specks. They were the so-called points, and were rather like the tokens obtained by killing people in the elimination competition in the gathering of mercenaries, though the only difference was that one was tangible, while the other was ethereal, as if was produced by the artifact. Every person would start off with 1 point, and then increase it by killing other competitors, while the ancient jade pendant was the item to store it all. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. In that time, Jian Chen had already traversed hundreds of kilometers at a steady pace on his cloud, discovering many places with marks of battle. There was quite a lot of blood at the places, indicating that many Radiant Saint Masters had met in such places, where they then battled. Within the half a day, Jian Chen also encountered a few groups of Radiant Saint Masters, one that had as many as 7. He had even encountered 2 people who traveled alone just like him. As a result of these encounters, Jian Chen's original 8 points had already reached over 40. Jian Chen flew in the air on a cloud condensed from Radiant Saint Force. He already extended his presence to the limit, enveloping a radius of 20 kilometers to search for competitors. At that moment, Jian Chen paused slightly. He glared fixedly in the distance, his eyebrows furrowed. He saw that over 30 kilometers away, a black cloud quickly floated over in the distance. In front of the black cloud, there were several Radiant Saint Masters on white clouds with expressions of unconcealed fear, currently fleeing for their lives. The black cloud chasing behind them was not a real dark cloud, but rather a flock of dark, flying magical beasts, totaling to an insurmountable number. Class 4 crow beasts. Isn't there just too many? Jian Chen focused his gaze at the cloud formed from magical beasts, and a sliver of shock appeared on his face. He had killed plenty of Class 4 magical beasts in his life, but this was the first time Jian Chen had ever encountered so many at one time. At this moment, the Radiant Saint Masters chased by the countless crow beasts discovered Jian Chen. They immediately changed their directions, heading directly for Jian Chen, wanting to pull him in too. Seeing this, Jian Chen's lips curled into a vague sneer. He did not retreat, and instead traveled forwards. The cloud beneath him flew at a steady pace towards the crow beasts. The Radiant Saint Masters pursued by the crow beasts all revealed expressions of joy when they saw what Jian Chen was doing. This person clearly doesn't know how powerful these crows are. Not only did he not escape, he's flying towards us. Is he looking to die? That idiot probably thinks all these crows are Class 1 and are easy to kill. Even if they are Class 1 magical beasts, there's thousands of them, or even tens of thousands. It's not that easy, not to mention the fact that all of them are Class 4, with some Class 5 ones in between. Even if Carolee Wei, the one ranked first among all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, encountered so many crow beasts, it's certain death. Is this person so confident that he thinks he's stronger than Carolee Wei? Whatever. Since he has no idea of danger and is flying over, we'll get him to stall the crows for some time. It'll give us some time to escape. You're right, I just hope that the person isn't too weak and can keep the crows busy for a little longer, so that we have more time to find some other Radiant Saint Masters. Once there's enough people, perhaps we might be able to resist this horde. The Radiant Saint Masters all sneered. At the same time, they began to charge up power, ready to charge off with their greatest speed once the person ahead had gained the attention of the crows behind, ready to pull open a great distance when the time was right. The reason they had prepared beforehand was because they were confident the incoming person was unable to stall the crows for too long. Soon, the Radiant Saint Masters approached Jian Chen. In order to encourage Jian Chen, a person cried out from far away, "Sir, please help us out. We'll work together with all our strength to kill these crows." As he spoke, powerful Radiant Saint Force had already gathered before him. He seemed like he really was ready to go all out in a battle to the death with the crows. Jian Chen did not even glance at the Radiant Saint Masters, focusing on the black mass of crows behind them. Radiant Saint Force from the surroundings had already begun gathering around Jian Chen quickly. Seeing how Jian Chen really had no idea of danger and wanted to fight against the crows, the Radiant Saint Masters all sneered inwardly. As they brushed past Jian Chen, the Radiant Saint Force that they had gathered immediately coalesced around their feet, abruptly increasing their flight speed, flying past Jian Chen in a flash and fleeing into the distance. Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes and began to pour all his strength into gathering Radiant Saint Force. It was as if he did not see the Radiant Saint Masters who had rushed past him like a violent gust of wind at all. Suddenly, the originally calm Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings became violent. Streaks of visible light began to pour inwards from all directions, all pooling in front of Jian Chen. At that very moment, the radiant saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers began to surge, like a storm, creating wild gusts of wind in the surroundings. Although the crows were not strong, only class 4, there were just too many, so even Jianchen needed to be careful in facing them. Feeling the violent motion of the surrounding radiant saint force, the fleeing radiant saint masters were all stunned. A sliver of shock appeared on their faces. They could not help but come to a stop. They all just stared at Jianchen in astoundment from several kilometers away in the air. He actually moved all the radiant saint force in the radius of 5 kilometers all by himself. How is this possible? That speed at gathering radiant saint force is just too fast. It's definitely not something a class 6 radiant saint master can do. Is he perhaps class 7? Just who is that person? He's actually so strong. Even Kara Liwei probably isn't as great as him. Even Kara Liwei's speed at coalescing radiant saint force is not at such a level. The radiant saint masters cried out in surprise in the distance. Currently, a huge change occurred to their gazes towards Jianchen. The flock of crows were already less than 300 meters away from Jianchen. They directly flew towards him, flooding at him. At the same time, an extremely powerful ball of radiant saint force had been gathered around him. It radiated with dazzling white light, like a sun, paling everything else around it. Radiance burst. With a cold voice from within the ball of radiant saint force, the radiant saint force began to separate and gather into soybean-sized droplets, floating around Jianchen. Each droplet rippled with powerful energy, filled with a sharp intent. Just when the crows were 50 meters from Jianchen, Jianchen extended a finger from within the droplets of radiant saint force. The droplets were like countless sharp arrows, shooting towards the crows as tiny streaks of white light. When the droplets collided with the crows, it directly punched a hole through them, before continuing onto the crows behind without any decrease in power. Every droplet contained a powerful energy, able to threaten Heaven Saint Masters and heavily injure Earth Saint Masters. Even though the crows had bodies of magical beasts, there were only class 4 after all. Before the tiny droplets of energy, their feathers, objects that were considered to be extremely tough even to regular fighters, were unable to block anything, becoming as fragile as tofu. Countless droplets pierced through the dense flock of crows. Those that were closer to the front immediately had countless holes punched through their bodies, falling out of the sky as they screeched unpleasantly. Bright red blood and black feathers covered the skies, as if it had begun to rain blood. Chapter 763. Crow King. Thousands of crows already surrounded Jianchen. From a distance, it seemed like a huge black sphere, floating in the sky and completely swallowing up Jianchen. It was impossible to see what was going on inside from the outside. The radiant saint masters stared fixedly in the direction of Jianchen at what was happening from several kilometers away. Their expressions were rather complicated. They too had never thought that a random competitor they encountered would possess such great strength, be able to fend off thousands of class 4 magical beasts all by himself. Even if this leaked outside, no one would believe it. Just who is that person? Why is he so strong? He can't be nobody. Can he be Jaxi, second among the 10 great class 6 radiant saint masters? Among the class 6 radiant saint masters, probably only Jaxi has such strength. That's wrong. I've personally witnessed Jaxi's strength. Although it's very strong, it's not this powerful. Also, Jaxi's speed at gathering radiant saint force is far from being this fast. Who cares who he is? Even if he's this strong, he's only a class 6 radiant saint master. He definitely won't survive when surrounded by so many crows. You're right. This amount of class 4 crows is not something a class 6 radiant saint master can handle. Not to mention that fact that there's some class 5 crows ones hidden inside too. Unless he's class 7, the best thing he can do is just fleeing for his life like us. That may not be the case though. Haven't you all seen the droplets of blood raining down and the crows that have fallen from the sky? It's only been so long, and over 100 crows have already been killed. And all of these crows had countless holes in them, while quite a few have basically disintegrated. Maybe this person really can kill all these crows if given some more time. If you don't believe it, just watch. The radiant Saint Masters became quiet, staring at where Jianchen was with all their attention. However, as they saw the crows constantly fall from the sky like rain, shock silently pervaded the depths of their spirits. If it were them, they strongly believed it was impossible to be able to kill the crows so quickly when surrounded by so many. The radiant saint force in the surroundings gathered steadily towards Jianchen, constantly turning into soybean-sized droplets in Jianchen's hand before shooting off in all directions. The Arte, Radiance Burst, was cast consecutively, without any pauses in between. At this moment, Jianchen was surrounded by thousands of crows, but he remained calm. There was nothing in a radius of 15 meters around him. The crows were unable to charge into the area, because once they entered it, the seemingly airtight radiance burst would pierce thousands of holes into them, absolutely obliterating their corpses. Currently, Jianchen's slender figure that floated in the air seemed to become a machine of slaughter. Every second, there would be even more crows that would fall to his attacks. The ground below had already been dyed blood red, while the densely packed corpses of the crows had formed a thick mat on the ground. The sharp smell of blood pervaded the air. The death of their peers did not make the crows retreat. The smell of blood instead made the crows even more frenzied. They did not fear death, shooting towards Jianchen like moths to a candle. The crows decreased at a visible rate. At this very moment, a dozen or so relatively larger Class 5 crows suddenly screeched together and shot towards Jianchen with an imposing manner in spite of the radiance burst. Their bodies like tough metal, producing clings and clangs as the droplets collided with them. They actually resisted the attacks. Although the attacks could not harm them, the collisions created a very powerful resistance towards their advance. They could advance no further after they arrived 10 meters away from Jianchen. A cold light flashed across Jianchen's eyes, and the power of the radiance burst abruptly increased. It became over twice as powerful than before, and with that, the dozen or so Class 5 crows were no longer able to remain as calm as before when receiving the attacks. Blood would splatter in the shapes of blooming flowers as every soybean-sized droplet collided with them splatter. It was unable to pierce through them, though it was enough to heavily injure Tam. Soon after, the dozen or so Class 5 crows ended up the same as their peers. Their bodies were in pieces and they fell out of the sky, riddled with holes. Suddenly, an ear-piercing cry reverberated from within the flock of crows. It was extremely sharp, able to puncture metal and destroy rocks, and enough for people's eardrums to ache. With the cry, all the crows around Jianchen behaved as if they had received an order. They all gave up their attempts of attack, quickly dispersing into the distance with the flap of their wings. Jianchen was no longer surrounded by a flock of crows, visible once again from the outside. The surrounding crows all backed off to a distance 3 kilometers away, staring at Jianchen with hostility. With their retreat, an ink-black, 10-meter-wide crow king appeared. Its scarlet eyes were filled with bloodthirstiness and cruelty, staring viciously at Jianchen. Class 6. Jianchen stared coldly at the Crow King. He had discovered its presence long ago, though Jianchen just looked down upon a mere Class 6 magical beast. Suddenly, the Crow King emitted a huge pressure. It turned into a streak of black light, hurling itself towards Jianchen. The bodies of Class 6 magical beasts were extremely strong, much more powerful than Radiant Saint Masters. If Jianchen were to continue using Radiance Burst, it would only tickle the Crow King, undoubtedly, unable to pose any threat at all. Jianchen opened his hand and a Radiant Saint sword immediately formed, shooting towards the Crow King as a white streak of light. Bang! The sword's collision produced an extremely powerful sound. Not only did the impact and its energy ripple stop the Crow King's advance, it even knocked it backwards. Blood had been drawn on its head. Jianchen became stern and mumbled to himself, "This Crow King really does have a strong body. My attack that can heavily injure Heaven Saint Masters only scratched it. Looks like ordinary attacks aren't enough harm it." The Crow King seemed to be enraged, cawing loudly at the sky. It opened its beak and a huge ball of violent energy shot towards Jianchen like a flash of lightning. Jianchen remained calm and chanted with a deep voice, Radiant Saint Shield. The surrounding Radiant Saint force gathered at an unbelievable speed, forming a 2-meter-wide shield, blocking the ball of energy spat out by the Crow King. At the same time, Jianchen extended a finger at the sky and a gleam of light flashed violently across his eyes. He cried out, "Judgment Sword!" All the Radiant Saint force in the radius of 5 kilometers seemed to experience an extremely powerful suction, surging quickly towards Jianchen. It all coalesced to form a huge 10-meter-long sword, radiating with dazzling light, while within it hid the ripples of terrifying energy. Before it, even Heaven-tier battle skills cast by Heaven Saint Masters paled in comparison. Judgment Sword. It's actually the Judgment Sword, one of the 3 great arts. Only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters can cast it. He's actually Class 7. He's Yang Yutian. I heard that Yang Yutian, with his strength as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, can use the 3 great arts which can only supposedly be learnt by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. There's also rumors that Jianchen cast the forbidden arte, God's Descent, on the inky stratus on Fragrance River and killed several dozen Heaven Saint Masters. With the appearance of Judgment's sword, the Radiant Saint Masters who observed from a distance all paled in shock. The Crow King cried out weirdly, and it stared at the 10-meter-long sword above Jianchen with its scarlet eyes in dread. It could feel the power of destruction within the sword, which even made it feel a sliver of fear. Shortly afterwards, the Crow King immediately flew backwards, flapping its wings to consecutively shoot huge blades of wind towards Jianchen, in attempt to keep Jianchen busy and make time to escape. Looking the dozen or so wind blades, a vicious gleam of light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. The Judgment Sword shot out with a huge bang, destroying the dozen or so wind blades that were approaching Jianchen, and afterwards, the sword turned into a silvery white streak of light, chasing after the Crow King with an unbelievable speed. The sword passed through the Crow King's body, completely ending the Crow King's life before disappearing into the horizon, shooting off to somewhere unknown. Before death, the Crow King cried out sadly and unwillingly. The cry reverberated across the entire sky, spreading far and wide. Afterwards, its huge body collided heavily with the ground, raising dust and dirt. Suddenly, an earth-shaking cry reverberated in the distance. Filled with sorrow and anger, it pierced through numerous mountains and rivers, echoing about in the area. With the sound, an extremely great presence appeared in the distance. Several kilometers away, the Radiant Saint Masters paled immediately. The sound was like a huge hammer smashing against their chest, causing them to spit out a mouthful of blood as they became sheet white. Jianchen became solemn. His calm gaze became a glare at that very moment, staring fixedly into the distance. He muttered with a deep voice, "Class 7. Chapter 764. The vital energies in the blood. Jianchen revealed a seriousness he rarely showed. From the sound, he could already tell that it was an extremely powerful Class 7 magical beast, at least as powerful as a human 5th heavenly layer Saint Ruler. Why is there such a powerful magical beast here? Jianchen was secretly shocked. The magical beast that had just caught out was clearly a companion of the Crow King he had killed, or maybe even an elder, but he knew that he had already aggravated the Class 7 magical beast in the distance. The Radiant Saint Masters standing far away all became sheet white. They became absolutely terrified. The earth-shaking cry earlier had already filled them with fear. Currently, their hearts were drowned in endless dread. It caused their bodies to shake slightly, with their legs trembling. This must be a Class 7 magical beast. Leave, let's quickly leave. What are you all staying for? Do you want to die? A Radiant Saint Master said with a trembling voice, before immediately condensing Radiant Saint force into a cloud, stepping onto it to escape. The other Radiant Saint Masters all returned to their senses one after another. Thinking about how terrifying a Class 7 magical beast was, they could not help but shudder. They did not dare to stay any longer, leaving the area immediately at their greatest speed. Seeing their fleeing figures in the distance, a gleam of cold light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. He did not plan on letting them go. Although the Class 7 magical beast pressured Jianchen slightly, it was definitely not as bad as the Radiant Saint Masters fleeing and spreading the news. However, just as Jianchen wanted to pursue them, the remaining crows in the surroundings all cawed out angrily, staring at Jianchen with their bloodshot eyes. They shot towards Jianchen with their greatest speed, clearly wanting to avenge the Class 6 magical beast. Since you all want to die that badly, let me help you out. A powerful killing intent flashed across Jianchen's eyes, and the droplets from the radiance burst immediately gathered before him, shooting towards the surrounding crows with lightning speed. A while later, when Jianchen had killed all the crows, the Radiant Saint Masters had already escaped successfully, all nowhere to be seen. Below him, the corpses of the crows had already formed a small mountain, while the blood on the ground formed streams. The air was full with the sharp smell of blood. Jianchen slowly dispersed the Radiant Saint force he had gathered, glancing at the direction in which the Radiant Saint Masters had ran off. He said softly, "You're lucky this time. The next time I meet you all will be the time when I send all of you off." Jianchen arrived before the Class 6 Crow King's corpse, which was several dozens of meters away. A Radiant Saint sword coalesced in his right hand, and he used it to stab the Crow King's body. He extracted a fist-sized monster core from the Crow King's body with practiced movements. Looking at the Class 6 monster core, a vague smile finally formed on Jianchen's face. He had sensed that a Class 6 magical beast was hidden in the flock of crows long ago, while his purpose was actually for the Class 6 monster core. Almost all the Class 6 magical beasts gathered in the depths of the Cross Mountains, which was the reason for the lack of Class 6 magical beasts on the Tianyuan continent. As a result, Class 6 monster cores were extremely valuable, and with the deficiency in the continent, it was basically an object of high demand but no supply. I wonder if Ming Dong's successfully broken through to Heaven's Saint Master. If he has, then this monster core is perfect for him. Jianchen mumbled to himself. Although he had plenty of Class 5 monster cores in his space ring, monster cores of such a level were no longer as effective for Heaven's Saint Masters anymore. Only Class 6 monster cores were useful for powerful people with such strength. Shortly afterwards, Jianchen furrowed his eyebrows slightly. His face scrunched up to a vexed expression, mumbling to himself, "It's a pity that the space rings have been sealed by the power of the Saint artifact and can't be opened no matter what. Once the number of Class 6 monster cores increases, it'll be very difficult to carry around." Speaking, Jianchen seemed to think of something. His eyes suddenly shone. "Since the space rings are sealed by the power of the Saint artifact, can I get the artifact spirit to undo this seal?" Jianchen immediately became worked up. He called out with a deep voice, "Is the artifact spirit here?" "Overlord, this one is here." As soon as Jianchen finished speaking, he heard the artifact spirit's voice. A white-robed, middle-aged man had already appeared next to Jianchen without any sound. "Artifact spirit, are you able to undo the seal on my space ring?" Jianchen said to the artifact spirit, while anticipation rippled in his heart. Only after hearing what Jianchen had said did the artifact spirit remember that the Overlord's space ring was still sealed by him. His expression immediately changed, and in fear he said, "Please do not become angered, Overlord. This one did not seal Overlord's space ring on purpose. This one will remove the seal right now." The artifact spirit immediately removed the seal from Jianchen's space ring. Checking his space ring, Jianchen discovered that the powerful energy sealing the ring had indeed already disappeared. This delighted him immediately. With this, did it not mean that he could put all the things he had obtained inside it? Also, the problem with how monster cores were inconvenient to carry around was completely solved. Jianchen immediately placed the monster core into the ring, before looking to the middle-aged man. He said, "Artifact spirit, are there also Class 7 magical beasts in the Saint artifact?" The artifact spirit did not dare to ignore Jianchen's question. He immediately said, "Yes, Overlord, there are indeed many Class 7 magical beasts in this space. There are even a few Class 8 magical beasts." "What? Class 8? Jianchen was astounded, no longer able to maintain his calm. This was because Class 8 magical beasts were existences equivalent to Saint Kings, and from what the artifact spirit had said, there were actually more than one Class 8 magical beast. It was inconceivable. Just how did these powerful magical beasts get in here? Jian-Chen asked immediately. He was filled with a strong curiosity towards the whole matter. Overlord, this saint artifact has already existed for countless years. Before this one had even gained intelligence, there were already some magical beasts in here. They lived here and cultivated here, so after some time, their strength would naturally increase. Those Class 7 and Class 8 magical beasts in here currently only obtained their strength after cultivating for an extremely long time in this space, and also gave birth to many later generations. The artifact spirit explained to Jian-Chen. Then do they ever attack the competing Radiant Saint Masters? Jian-Chen asked. Overlord, these Class 7 and Class 8 magical beasts have already been sealed up by this one, so they're unable to threaten the competitors. Only after all the competitors leave are these seals released, where they recover their freedom. Towards Jian-Chen's questions, the artifact spirit said all he knew, and said it without any reserve. He did not hide anything at all. The matter of sealing the magical beasts was an agreement the artifact spirit had with a past president of the Union. Jian-Chen secretly relaxed. Before, the great cry had indeed pressured him slightly, because Jian-Chen could feel the strength of the Class 7 crow. Even with his strength as a fighter, he did not believe he could defeat it. At this very moment, strands of red gases suddenly began to gather around Jian-Chen from the ground full of blood, before all disappearing into the white tiger which slept on Jian-Chen's shoulder. Seeing this, Jian-Chen was stunned. He clearly had no idea as to what was happening. A gleam of light flashed across the artifact spirit's eyes, who was standing to the side. He immediately stared at the white tiger on Jian-Chen's shoulder and said, Overlord, the magical beast on your shoulder is not simple. It can actually draw out the vital energies bonded to the blood of magical beasts and absorb it. Jian-Chen immediately tried sensing it attentively, and indeed, he could feel that there were traces of vital energies in the red gases floating from the blood. The white tiger is already at the edge of breaking through. Perhaps the vital energies hidden within the blood of magical beasts can assist it. Jian-Chen understood everything very soon, where he immediately experienced a wave of uncontrollable excitement. Overlord, I can feel that after the magical beast on your shoulder absorbs these vital energies, it's actually growing stronger at an extremely slow rate. If it absorbs enough vital energies, it'll reach Class 6 at an earlier time. The artifact spirit said. What the artifact spirit had said affirmed Jian-Chen's guess. Jian-Chen dismissed the artifact spirit with a sliver of excitement, which he then stood there silently, all by himself, slowly waiting for the white tiger to absorb all the floating vital energies from the magical beast blood. Very soon, the vital energies from the Class 4 crow blood were absorbed by the white tiger. At moment, a ball of red gas, several hundred times denser than before, floated over nearby, and slowly was absorbed by the white tiger. This was the vital energies of the Class 6 Crow King. Jian-Chen could clearly feel that the vital energies of the Class 6 magical beast were much more helpful to the white tiger than the vital energies from the thousands of Class 4 magical beasts, and it was much more pure. Looks like I need to go hunting for some Class 6 magical beasts to help the white tiger break through. Jian-Chen muttered to himself. After waiting for a while, Jian-Chen immediately left the area when the vital energies stopped being absorbed, collecting all the monster cores of the crows with his strength as a fighter. With the artifact spirit covering him, Jian-Chen did not fear that his strength as a fighter would be exposed, unless the other competitors directly saw it. In the following days, Jian-Chen collected points as he hunted for magical beasts, using the vital energies hidden in the beast blood to assist the white tiger breakthrough. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed, and in those 5 days, the number of Class 6 magical beasts that had been slaughtered by Jian-Chen's hands had already reached a dozen or so, with even more Class 5 and Class 4 magical beasts. Not only did he obtain quite a few Class 6 monster cores, the sleeping white tiger also absorbed a large amount of vital energies as it broke through, causing it to glow with a soft, white light all over. The white light constantly became stronger as more vital energies was absorbed. However, some of the Class 6 magical beasts slaughtered by Jian Chen had some supporters. Some of them were the descendants of Class 7 magical beasts, while some were the subordinates of Class 7 magical beasts. Their deaths angered the Class 7 magical beasts, all giving out earth-shaking roars at the sky, echoing through the entire artifact space. It created a lot of discussion among the competitors, terrifying them all. There were only an extremely low amount of people who managed to stay calm, people who had an extremely good understanding of the Saint artifact. Other than all this, Jian Chen also encountered a few competitors. He directly sent them out of the artifact space without any mercy, allowing his points to reach over 80. Chapter 765. A fight for a monster core. 5 days later, Jian Chen arrived above a forest. The cloud he rode, condensed from radiant saint force, slowly flew at a low altitude as he expanded his presence to its absolute limit, enveloping a radius of 20 kilometers to search for the tracks of Class 6 magical beasts and the competitors. Jian Chen flew just above the tips of the trees. He turned to the white tiger which laid on his shoulder and mumbled. Now that the energy within Xiao Bai's begun to fluctuate unstably, he seems to have also reached the most crucial moment for breaking through Class 5 and reaching Class 6. I'll have to put the matter of collecting points aside first and help out Xiao Bai. It won't be too late for me to collect points afterwards. There's still 10 days, so plenty of time. Once Xiao Bai reaches Class 6, he'll be equal to human heaven saint masters. Also, as he's a winged tiger god, he'll definitely be much stronger than those other magical beasts. Even beasts of antiquity will pale in comparison. He'll also have some ability to protect itself. Unless it's saint rulers, probably no one can harm him. Just as Jian Chen thought about this, loud roars suddenly reverberated from up ahead. The sounds spread everywhere, echoing in the surroundings. Class 6 magical beast. Jian Chen's eyes lit up and he looked ahead with keen eyes. He mumbled to himself, this should be a magical beast at the peak of Class 6. The vital energies in its blood is extremely rich, and its voice seems to be filled with anger and pain. There's probably people fighting it. Jian Chen did not hesitate at all, immediately speeding in the direction where the sound originated from. In a dense forest 15 kilometers away from Jian Chen, a dozen or so radiant saint masters were scattered in groups of 3, in a formation. Milky white light constantly flickered, turning into 1. 3-meter-long radiant saint swords, shooting at the black, 6-meter-long panther. The black panther was already at the peak of Class 6, possessing an extremely great capacity for battle. However, it still struggled to counterattack when surrounded by a dozen or so radiant saint masters. Its body was already littered with wounds and covered in blood, while its black coat had already been dyed red. The black panther roared several times, while its vicious-looking eyes shone scarlet red. Not only did the panther's wounds hinder its ability for battle, but it made it become even more brutal. It became more and more courageous as it fought. With the constant swinging of its front paws, a powerful force shot towards the surrounding radiant saint masters over and over again, while the panther constantly spat out balls of violent energy at the surroundings from its mouth. The surrounding radiant saint masters actually handled the panther's attacks in an orderly fashion. In their groups of 3, 2 of them were responsible for receiving the panther's attacks, while the other person constantly condensed radiant saint swords to attack the panther. Their tacit teamwork was clearly the result of years of training. The wounds on the panther's body increased. Even though its body was extremely tough, it was unable to last much longer at all against the consecutive attacks of radiant saint swords. Suddenly, the panther roared at the sky. It paid a price of receiving 3 direct attacks to leap to a small group, opening its large, fierce-looking mouth to bite at a person without any hesitation. The radiant saint masters was unable to react in time, and his entire upper body was bitten by the panther. In the moment of life and death, a huge pillar of light descended from the sky, disappearing with the radiant saint master. It clearly was not the first time the panther had seen such a thing. It did not pay any attention to the huge pillar that had descended from the sky, immediately lunging at the second person without faltering. Its sharp claws viciously raked across the chest of the person. Crack. The radiant saint armor on the person seemed to be as weak as tofu, turning into smithereens from the panther's attack, causing the radiant saint master's chest to be dyed in blood. Arg! The person cried out in pain, and he was knocked flying from the panther's attack. As he flew, he spat out a mouthful of blood, becoming sheet white. The panther paid no more attention to the person. It opened its bloody mouth, continuing with the third radiant saint master. Radiant saint sword. The person did not falter. The radiant saint sword that he had just condensed immediately became a streak of white light, shooting towards the panther's mouth with lightning speed. Bang! The radiant saint sword that had entered the panther's mouth exploded with a loud sound. A powerful ripple of energy leaked out from the panther's mouth, causing the panther to cry out in pain, while blood constantly flowed from its mouth. At the same time, the huge, bloody mouth bit onto the person's body, engulfing his entire upper body. In that crucial, another giant pillar of light descended from the ground, taking the second radiant saint master away from the space of the artifact. Quick, attack its wounds with all you have. A person in another direction immediately cried out. Shortly afterwards, the dozen or so radiant saint masters all realized that it was a great opportunity to heavily injure the panther. All of them immediately began to condense radiant saint swords, shooting it at the deeper injuries of the panther, wanting to deal life-threatening damage to the panther by taking advantage of these injuries. Swish, 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 swish. A dozen or so radiant saint swords shot out from the radiant saint masters at almost simultaneously, striking the wounds of the panther with extremely great accuracy. The wounds expanded immediately, causing bright red blood spurted out from its body. The panther gave off a miserable cry and glanced at the people, eyes filled with endless hatred. Afterwards, it shot into the distance with a leap, fleeing away. At this moment, a huge, 3-meter-long radiant saint sword shot from the sky, transforming into a streak of light with a frightening manner. It caught up to the fleeing panther, before finally firmly striking its wound, deepening it. The strike was extremely powerful, several times more powerful than the radiant saint swords from the other people. The huge panther was actually sent flying by the strike, landing heavily 3 meters away. A bone-deep wound appeared on its back, which even exposed some of its inner organs. Roar! The panther gave out a cry of pain. The injury dealt by attack was just too great. This magical beast can't last much longer. Everyone hurry up, we can't let it be taken by someone else. The radiant saint masters who had surrounded the panther before called out and sprinted wildly towards the panther. Surging radiant saint force quickly gathered in their hands, forming radiant saint swords rapidly. With a swing, they flew towards the panther. The people wanted to kill the panther as soon as possible and obtain its monster core. As the many swords landed on the panther, it deepened the panther's injuries even more. It was no longer able to flee, now lying on the floor, roaring in pain. The life force of Class 6 magical beasts were just too tenacious. Even after taking of consecutive blows from over 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, the panther was still not dead. A streak of light quickly approached the area in the sky. It was a white-robed Radiant Saint Master on a cloud, and in his hand, 3 Radiant Saint swords were fully condensed. They quickly shot off side by side, striking the deep wound on the panther's neck with extremely great precision. Bang, bang, bang. With the 3 violent sounds, the panther's meter-wide head was severed from its body, knocked directly into the sky by the powerful energy ripples. It had been beheaded, drizzling the area with blood. The Class 6 Panther, a beast the dozen or so Radiant Saint Masters had spent an hour battling, died just like this. To Jian Qin, who had hurried over much later. Hurry up and go get the monster core. A Radiant Saint Master called out immediately, and several people ran towards the corpse at the same time, in attempt to extract the monster core as soon as possible. Meanwhile, another few Radiant Saint swords shot from the sky, this time targeting the Radiant Saint Masters who ran towards the panther's corpse. the expressions of the people all changed and they sneered. They all condensed a radiant saint sword each, where were shot towards the swords targeting their companions to block them, while the others shot towards Jianqin. A 2-meter-wide radiant saint shield appeared in Jianqin's hand, which he tossed out. It blocked the radiant saint swords flying towards him. Without faltering in speed, Jianqin flew over the tops of the people, before landing firmly before the panther corpse. He immediately condensed a radiant saint sword, which he stabbed into the panther's body, removing its monster core. His movements were extremely smooth and extremely proficient. Seeing the monster core being removed, the expressions of the dozen or so people became extremely ugly. They all glared at Jianqin with ill intent. "Sir, we were the ones who heavily injured this Class 6 magical beast after a great deal of effort before it was killed, so that monster core should belong to us. It seems rather unfair for Sir to now take the monster core." An old man said coldly with a dark complexion. He had already learnt that Jianqin's strength was something else in the short clashing from before. Otherwise, why would he spend so much time talking to Jianqin? He would have rushed him already with his advantage in numbers. "Sir, return the monster core to us, and we won't argue over what happened before. We'll go our own ways afterwards and mind our own businesses." Another radiant saint master said gruffly, while his gaze towards Jianqin was rather fearful. Before, they were not able to stop the person at all even when they had all struck out. The person arrived before the panther corpse calm as ever in the end. That was strength they could not just defend so easily. Jianqin grabbed a handful of grass from the ground and cleaned away the blood from the monster core, before looking up at the people. He said unenthusiastically, "Not only do I want this monster core, I also want the points you possess." Hearing that, all of the people's faces changed. A monstrous rage bloomed in their hearts. To them, Jianqin was haughty and extremely arrogant, and his oppressing words were going a little too far. Not only did he take their spoils of battle, he even wanted the points they possessed. This definitely was an undisguised provocation. Even though they knew Jianqin's strength was special, they did not believe that he could fend off over 10 people just by himself. Before, they were fearful of Jianqin, only because they did not want to provoke an expert like him so easily. It did not mean they were scared of him. "Since you are so arrogant, show us how powerful you are and if you have the right to be arrogant." Chapter 766, The White Tiger's Breakthrough, 1. The dozen or so radiant saint masters were angered by Jianqin. They all began to condense radiant saint swords to fight Jianqin, where over 10 swords shot from their hands, flying towards Jianqin without any mercy. They were very confident that even though Jianqin was very strong, he definitely was unable to do something as exaggerated as take on all of them all by himself. This was because they were not weak either, and also had an extremely good teamwork. Jianqin condensed a 2-meter-wide radiant saint shield in his left hand in front of him, while coalesced 6 radiant saint swords with his right hand. The 6 swords split into 3 different groups and shot at 3 people where one sword led and the other followed. The 3 leading swords directly shattered the people's radiant saint armor, while the 3 following swords collided with the no longer armored people. They directly pierced through their chests, appearing on the other side. Just as they faced the edge of death, 3 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, disappearing with them. At the same time, the radiant saint swords also collided with the shield in front of Jianqin. With a great bang, Jianqin's shield shattered, but the shards did not disappear. Instead, they formed streaks of light, shooting and surrounding 2 radiant saint masters. The 2 people had never expected that after breaking, the shards of the radiant saint shield could still harm people. Caught off guard, the countless pieces of shrapnel shot into their bodies, with many of the shards smashing into their throats and hearts, 2 life-threatening points of their bodies. Another 2 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, sucking away the 2 people from the artifact space. In just a single clash, 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters were slaughtered by Jianqin, causing the original group to only have 7 people remaining. The remaining people were all stunned. They stared at Jianqin with pale faces, while dread flooded the depths of their eyes. Jian Chen's strength had completely exceeded their expectations. They had never thought, no matter what, that Jian Chen would kill 5 of their companions in such a short time. Even though everything had occurred right before their eyes, they still struggled to accept it or believe it. Perhaps he's class 7. At this moment, similar thoughts appeared in the minds of the 7 remaining people. To them, only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could slaughter 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters so easily. At this very moment, another 7 Radiant Saint sword condensed before Jian Chen. The Radiant Saint force filled with extreme yang qi rippled with surging energy, not any weaker than a full power strike from a Heaven Saint Master. Run! The remaining people were overwhelmed with shock and all began to run. They no longer dared to stay behind to fight Jian Chen. Their hearts were filled with regret. If they had known that Jian Chen was so powerful earlier, how would they dare to ask Jian Chen for the Class 6 Monster Core? Jian Chen did not plan on letting them go. The swords shot out with a whistle, landing mercilessly on the backs of the 7 people. The Radiant Saint armor on the 7 of them all shattered, while the powerful force of the collision jolted through their bodies, heavily injuring their fragile bodies. The people could not help but vomit up a mouthful of blood as they also lost balance, collapsing onto the ground. Radiance burst. Jian Chen bellowed. Surging Radiant Saint force immediately condensed into bean-sized droplets, raining on the people. Now that the people had already lost their abilities to resist, they could only watch helplessly as the sky full of droplets bearing sharp intent fell on them. Their eyes were filled with despair towards placing within the top 10. The power of the artifact activated in time. Several huge pillars of light descended from the sky, sucking away all 7 of them, while Jian Chen's radiance burst collided with the soil. The violent energy within the droplets exploded, kicking soil into the air and permeating the air with dust. After being taken away by the artifact's energy, the Radiant Saint Masters all left behind a speck, or several thumb-sized specks of white light. These Radiant Saint Masters had clearly obtained the points from defeating a few other people before, as there was close to 30 specks of white light in total. Jian Chen used the ancient jade pendant to absorb the specks of light in the air, which increased his points to over 100. He was already a fifth of the way to a stable position within the top 10. Jian Chen did not fret over the points, because he knew that there were fights currently occurring all over the artifact. The amount of points he would obtain from competitors would be relatively fewer at the start, while close to the end, almost all the points would be gathered on the few remaining people. At that time, he would be able to easily obtain several dozen, or even hundreds of points from a Radiant Saint Master he casually met. Collecting the points left behind by the people, Jian Chen then walked over to the magical beast corpse. Immediately, a red gas floated from the blood of the panther, before finally being absorbed by the white tiger. The panther's strength was already at the peak of Class 6, so the vital energies in its blood was clearly much more powerful than regular Class 6 magical beasts. After absorbing the vital energies, the white light around the tiger became brighter and brighter, quickly enveloping it completely with extremely dazzling white light, surrounding the white tiger and partially hiding it. Very soon, the Class 6 panther's vital energies were completely absorbed by the white tiger. Jian Chen turned to look at it on his shoulder. His eyebrows immediately became furrowed while he fell into a dilemma. The white tiger was currently too eye-catching. If he met other competitors, he would not be able to hide the white tiger's special characteristics. Once this broke out among the competitors, the characteristics would be learnt by the great clans very quickly, and hence draw a lot of attention. It would not expose the tiger's real identity, but it was better to be safe than sorry. If he really did meet somebody extremely knowledgeable and they recognized the tiger, it would undoubtedly be something extremely terrifying, an outcome Jian Chen definitely did not wish to see. Jian Chen pondered for a while before immediately taking flight. He found a mountain range several dozen kilometers away and carved out a cave in an extremely hidden area before putting the white tiger in the cave. He planned to wait there for the white tiger to break through. Jian Chen sat cross-legged 5 meters away from the white tiger, eyes closed and resting. He planned to stay there and accompany the white tiger as it broke through, to prevent anything unexpected from happening. 3 days passed just like this. In those 3 days, the light on the white tiger's body became brighter and brighter, but it still did not break through successfully. After waiting patiently for 3 days, Jianchen could not sit around for any longer. Standing up, he stared at the white tiger covered in white light. It did not seem like it would be able to successfully break through and reach Class 6 in half a month, and Jianchen just did not have this time to wait around in the Saint Artifact. No, I can't keep waiting like this. It's unsuitable to take the white tiger out of the Saint Artifact like this. Its appearance will definitely attract a lot of attention. Since the vital energies within the blood of Class 6 magical beasts can assist the white tiger in breaking through, I'll go hunt Class 6 magical beasts. Jianchen mumbled softly, before immediately leaving the cave. For the white tiger's safety, he could not conceal his strength as a fighter any longer, directly casting down a powerful barrier at the entrance, encasing the entire cave with his abilities as a saint ruler. With that, even if other people bored another hole, they would not be able to enter the encased area. After doing everything, Jianchen used tree branches to hide the entrance of the cave. Ensuring that the entrance to the cave had been completely concealed, he left the area, traveling off into the distance to hunt for Class 6 magical beasts. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days passed. 10 days had already passed inside the Saint Artifact, leaving 5 more days until the competition ended. In those 2 days, Jianchen abandoned the competition, devoting all his energy into finding Class 6 magical beasts to slaughter. Afterwards, he would directly throw the corpses into his space ring, to bring back for the white tiger to absorb the vital energies. Currently, the white tiger's breakthrough was the priority, so he placed the matter of getting into the top 10 to the side without any hesitation. In the 2 days, Jianchen killed a total of 10 Class 6 magical beasts, supplying a great amount of vital energy to the white tiger to break through. The white tiger was one more step closer to breaking through after absorbing all the vital energies. The white light around it had become completely tangible, forming a huge cocoon. Today, 8 white-robed radiant Saint Masters rode a cloud over a mountain range. Ignoring the leading female, the other 7 people were all men of different ages, and they all carried bulging bags. The bags were completely made from magical beast skin. Miss, it's already been 10 days. There's only 5 days left before the competition ends. In these remaining days, it'll be very likely for us to meet Yang Yutian. Do we listen to Elder Lu and avoid becoming enemies with him, or do we help out Yun Tian and take him on as an opponent, preventing him from placing within the top 10 when we meet him? Of the 8 radiant Saint Masters, a ruddy old man asked as he looked at the leading female. Chapter 767, The White Tiger's Breakthrough, 2. The woman in front was an alluring beauty. She was the first young lady of the Kara clan, the person ranked first among the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, Kara Liwei. She seemed as though in thought as she used her right hand to gently play around with her slightly messy hair, which was blown about by the wind. She said with a soft voice, "Although I've never seen Yang Yutian, I've learnt quite a lot about his deeds from Elder Lu. If we really do compare him with Yun Tian, I obviously will lean more towards him. But I have no idea what type of person this Yang Yutian is, and whether he will achieve great things. As for Yun Tian, his conditions are tempting, but I don't trust him much at all. I'm not going to choose who to support until I see Yang Yutian myself." Miss is right. The Radiant Saint Master Union is a force to be reckoned with, while both Yang Yutian and Yun Tian may become the successor of the organization. However, the 2 of them have already turned on each other. Once one of them fails, they'll be utterly doomed. We shouldn't be careless right now. Once we leap to the wrong side, our Kara clan may become enemies of the Radiant Saint Master Union. A middle-aged man agreed with her. Although they had no need to meddle with the internal affairs of the Union, it was a great opportunity to pull the Union to their side at the same time. This was a chance that their Kara clan could not just give up so easily. As they spoke, the group flew over a mountain range. But at that very moment, a gleam of light flashed across Kara Liwei's eyes. She immediately stopped flying and glared downwards. The people behind her all stopped soon after. They too stared downwards in interest. They knew that once the first young lady of their clan displayed such an expression, she had discovered something. However, after looking for quite a long time but still unable to find anything out of place, they could not help but become doubtful. Immediately, someone could bear it any longer and asked, "Miss, have you discovered something?" Kara Wei's expression slowly became stern. "I feel a weird energy down below. It seems to be the energy of barriers that only Saint Rulers can use." Hearing that, the 7 Radiant Saint Masters all piqued in interest. They did not find it weird that Kara Wei could sense the energy of barriers, because they all knew very well that the young lady before them was special. Not only could she sense Radiant Saint Force, she could also sense the energy of other attributes as a Radiant Saint Master, and even more unbelievable, she became able to sense World Force only used by Saint Rulers after she had reached Class 6. The only shortcoming was that she could only feel the energies and World Force, and not control or manipulate it. The barrier energy cast down by Saint Rulers was transformed from World Force, so naturally, Kara Wei was able to sense it clearly. "Wait here for a while, I'll go down and have a look." Kara Wei descended from the air into the dense forest. Following the feeling in her heart, she discovered a cave covered up by branches in the end. Kara Wei carefully looked around. Her eyes flowed with interest and she mumbled to herself, "These branches haven't dried yet, so they were clearly broken off not too long ago. And this cave, looking at the marks, it was only dug out a while ago. Just who did this?" Kara Wei furrowed her eyebrows tightly. Shortly afterwards, she seemed to think of something and her expression changed slightly. She mumbled to herself, "There's a barrier around this newly carved cave. Perhaps there's Saint Rulers in the Saint Artifact?" Although she had reached such a conclusion, she did not feel any fear at all. It was not like she had never seen Saint Rulers. She had even come in contact with Saint Kings several times before. As a result, Saint Rulers trouble her at all. She stared at the pitch-black cave and hesitated for a while. Afterwards, she raised her slender arm, and a powerful Radiant Saint sword immediately condensed in her jade-white hand. With a wave, the sword transformed into a streak of white light, shooting into the cave. Bang! A powerful sound immediately resounded from the cave, while surging energy began to leak from the cave entrance. The 2-meter-tall entrance was increased by 1-fold in size, while the entire mountain shook slightly from the strike. The barrier was hidden within the cave, but Kara Wei's strike on the barrier did not even shake it. At the same time, hundreds of kilometers away, the white-clothed Jian Chen had just slaughtered a Class 6 poison magic scorpion. Just as he wanted to place the beast corpse into his space ring, a gleam of light suddenly flashed across his eyes. He said with a deep voice, "Crap, the barrier's been attacked. Looks like where the white tiger is hiding has been exposed. I need to hurry back immediately." Jian Chen no longer remained as leisurely as before. With a wave of his hand, the huge corpse of the scorpion was placed clearly into the space ring, and then he hurried away at his greatest speed. Outside the cave, the commotion caused by Kara Wei alerted the Radiant Saint Masters in the sky. They immediately descended and arrived beside Kara Wei. They asked, "Miss, what's happened?" Kara Wei remained silent. She stared fixedly at the barrier hidden deep within the cave, and she clasped her fist at the entrance. She said, "This one is from the Kara clan. I wonder which senior is cultivating in seclusion here." Kara Wei did not intend on breaking the barrier with the strike before. She only intended on alerting the person inside. It seemed rather impolite. Kara Wei did not have to worry about a single Saint Ruler at all. Also, with her status and identity within the Kara clan, she did not need to stoop so low when facing a Saint Ruler. Perhaps there really are Saint Rulers here? The other Radiant Saint Masters all stared at the cave, displaying shocked expressions. This was the first time they had heard that there were Saint Rulers within the Saint Artifact. The people waited outside the cave for a while, but they did not get any reply. "Miss, let's just leave. Perhaps this senior just doesn't want to see us. We don't need to be wasting time here." A long while later, a middle-aged man finally became impatient and suggested on the side. Hearing that, Carolee thought quietly for a while before sighing gently, "Then let's leave." With that, they turned around, ready to depart. However, at that very moment, a powerful presence suddenly appeared in the cave. The presence was filled with utmost prestige and power, like the descent of a paramount lord. It broke through the obstruction of the barrier, spreading outwards quickly, enveloping the entire mountain range very soon. The group of people came to a screeching stop. They all floated in the sky on white clouds, staring closely at the cave. No, although this presence is powerful, it's far from the power of saint rulers. There's a peculiarity here. An old man said with a deep voice as he stared at the cave. This presence is filled with prestige and power, and I also seem to vaguely feel a sliver of violence within it. Perhaps the person within it is a bloodthirsty person? A middle-aged man said with a dark complexion. No. Carolee shook her head gently. She stared at the cave with a weird glint in her beautiful eyes and said slowly, "If I haven't guessed wrongly, this presence is actually from a magical beast." What? A magical beast? That had shocked all other 7 Radiant Saint Masters. However, after thinking it over carefully, they felt like it was indeed very logical. This magical beast isn't strong, so how can it cast a barrier to protect itself? Also, looking at it, it seems to be breaking through, and from Class 5 to Class 6. If it was Class 7, the presence definitely would not be something we can cope with. An old man analyzed carefully, but he was filled with doubt. Let's just wait here and see. Carolee remained calm, but the light in her eyes constantly flickered. Afterwards, they waited quietly outside in the air. They all wanted to see just what would happen. An hour later, a streak of white light suddenly flew over from the distance. To no surprise, it headed towards where Carolee's group was. The arrival of the person immediately attracted the group's attention. A cold light flashed across many of their eyes, and immediately, a person sneered, "That person dares to run around recklessly all by himself. He must be quite strong, and he probably has quite a few points on him. Haha, the young miss just happens to be lacking in some points. Why don't we take it all from that person? I just hope the amount he has won't disappoint us." An old man chuckled. The figure in the distance arrived in front of them very soon, stood 20 meters away. Only at that moment could Carolee see the person's appearance. He was in his 20s, an extremely handsome young man. However, what shocked Carolee was that the young man's handsome face was actually rather resolute. It was a type of resoluteness would only appear on fighters who had experienced the wind and the rain and countless life-threatening situations. But it was currently appeared on a Radiant Saint Master, people who always lead comfortable lives. This amazed Carolee greatly. Along with the man's cold gaze, Carolee even had a wrong impression that the young man before her was a fighter and not a Radiant Saint Master, someone who had been through thick and thin. However, what surprised Carolee the most was that her own appearance had no effect on the young man. His cold gaze did not even pause on her face, only glancing past indifferently. Thinking back, if a person did not become infatuated when they saw her face, they would be fully flushed. Even when old Saint Ruler monsters saw her, a vague sliver of admiration would flash across their eyes. There was no one who was able to keep their calm after seeing her for the first time, or even exchange glances so coldly. To Carolee, she felt that this man before her was clearly differently when compared to the other people. "Brat, hand over your points obediently and then forfeit yourself if you want to avoid some pain." Behind Carolee, a middle-aged man bellowed as he stared at Jianchen coldly. Hearing that, a cold light flashed across Jianchen's eyes. He raised his hand and a Radiant Saint sword immediately condensed. What great condensing speed! When the people witnessed what Jianchen had done, they were all stunned. Even Carolee's eyes constricted abruptly. Her gaze towards Jianchen already began to experience some minute changes. This was because Jianchen's speed at condensing Radiant Saint force was just too quick, so fast that even she fell short by a little. Radiant Saint armor. The Radiant Saint Masters of the Kara clan were battle-worn people, so they reacted very quickly. They immediately condensed Radiant Saint armors to protect themselves at their greatest speed, as well as to prepare for battle. At the same time, The sword in Jian Chen's head shot towards the person who spoke. It directly dispersed the armor that had not completely condensed, before landing heavily on the person's chest. The radiant Saint Master gave out a cry in pain, before a huge pillar of light descended from the sky, taking him away. He was sent out of the competition. Chapter 768. The Kara clan. What Jian Chen did angered the radiant Saint Masters of the Kara clan immediately. Other than Kara Li Wei, the other radiant Saint Masters began condensing radiant Saint swords. The 6 swords shot towards Jian Chen at the same time. Jian Chen's gaze was cold. He raised his left hand slightly and the surrounding radiant Saint force immediately began to gather quickly. In a short blink of an eye, it formed a huge shield before him, and another 3 radiant Saint swords had already gathered around Jian Chen's right hand at the same time. Boom! When the 6 swords from the Kara clan people collided with Jian Chen's shield, it immediately gave off a powerful sound. The 6 radiant Saint Masters were not weak, far stronger than those that Jian Chen had met before. Jian Chen's shield broke loudly only after blocking 3 swords, and the 3 other swords continued towards him without faltering in power. Jian Chen remained calm and unperturbed. With a slight wave of his right hand, the 3 swords before him immediately shot out with lightning speed, colliding with the 3 incoming radiant Saint swords head-on with a loud sound. Jian Chen's radiant Saint swords were clearly more powerful than the ones from the opposing people. His opponent's swords immediately shattered when the 6 swords collided mid-air, while Jian Chen's swords continued towards the 3 people. However, they were weakened by the collision, clearly much less powerful than before. Swish! 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 The 3 swords transformed into streaks of white light, directly colliding with the 3 people's chest with lightning speed. In that very moment, it cracked their radiant Saint armor, while their fragile bodies were affected by the powerful collision, jolting their bodies. A mouthful of blood sprayed from their mouths, and their faces paled immediately. The people from the Kara clan all revealed shocked expressions, staring at Jian Chen in disbelief. Jian Chen's strength stunned them, but what truly overwhelmed them was that they had never even heard of such a powerful radiant Saint Master. This was the true reason for their disbelief. The Kara clan had collected information on almost all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Although it was impossible for them to know every Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, it allowed them to pay close attention to a few powerful Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters at the very least. Kara Li Wei's expression became unprecedentedly stern. The young man's strength also shocked her very greatly, because even she, ranked first among the top 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, had no confidence in winning against the young man before her. Jian Chen's movements did not stop at all because of their shock. With a thought, another few powerful Radiant Saint swords condensed before him. He could already feel the changes to the White Tiger. He needed to slaughter the people before him as soon as possible, and then go into the cave to check on the White Tiger's situation. Yang Yutian, stop. We are people of the Kara clan and we do not wish to become enemies with you. At this moment, Kara Li Wei suddenly called out with a high-pitched voice. She had never seen Jian Chen, but she could at least guess Jian Chen's identity. What? Yang Yutian? He's Yang Yutian? What Kara Li Wei had called out caused all the other people of the Kara clan to be astounded. However, they soon realized that it was not surprising. There was only one Radiant Saint Master who possessed such unbelievable strength, where not only did they fail to deal with him with so many people working together, 3 of them were injured. It could only be the 3rd disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union President, the person who knew the forbidden arts and killed over 30 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself, Yang Yutian. After learning the young man's identity, their gazes towards Jian Chen changed immediately. The anger within disappeared, because they all understood that the young man before them had an extremely great chance at becoming the next president of the Union. He was a person that they could not offend no matter what. Jian Chen's had paused slightly and stared at Kara Li Wei with some surprise. He was not affected by Kara Li Wei's alluring looks, remaining just as cold as before. He asked, "Are you people of the Kara clan?" Kara Li Wei used her limpid eyes to look at Jian Chen with a complicated gaze. She too did not think that she would meet Yang Yutian in such a way. Also, from what happened before, Kara Liwei had personally witnessed Yang Yutian's coldness and ruthless resoluteness, as well as his powerful strength. This allowed Kara Liwei to finally grasp some understanding of what type of person Yang Yutian was. Although he was only 24 this year, Kara Liwei understood that Yang Yutian was vastly different from regular Radiant Saint Masters from what happened before. He could not be underestimated at all, and could not be judged according to his age. Correct, we are indeed people from the Kara clan. Yang Yutian, my Kara clan has no intentions of becoming enemies with you. What happened before was a misunderstanding. Kara Liwei looked at Jian Chen and said softly. In the very moment she saw Yang Yutian, she immediately forewent her preparations to work with Yun Tian. This was because Kara Liwei understood that Yang Yutian could not be offended no matter what, and if he was offended, the outcome would be much worse than offending Yun Tian. Also, Yang Yutian greatly exceeded Yun Tian in both talent and strength. She had even felt a sliver of the presence of slaughter from Yang Yutian, something Yun Tian definitely did not have. Jian Chen stayed silent for a while, before slowly dispersing his radiant saint swords. He said expressionlessly, "Go, leave here immediately." The Kara clan was one of the 3 great clans of the Holy Empire, and controlled a third of the empire's fate. At the same time, they were as powerful as an ancient clan, which also made Jian Chen quite fearful. He did not want to purposely provoke the clan over some small matters. Most importantly, the Qin Huang Kingdom was a subsidiary of the Kara clan. If he did fall out with the clan, even the Qin Huang Kingdom would be affected when his identity was exposed. Seeing how Jian Chen did not wish to pursue the matter, the people of the Kara clan immediately relaxed slightly. This was because if their relationship with Jian Chen took for a bad turn, it could greatly affect the clan. This was something they did not wish to see. One of their people was sent out of the competition from the conflict before, but it was not life-threatening, so it was not too big of a problem. Currently, the presence from the White Tiger was no longer blocked by the barrier cast down by Jian Chen. Inside the cave, it became more and more powerful, enveloping a radius of several dozen kilometers. It was also constantly increasing. The people of the Kara clan did not leave immediately. Kara Liwei glanced at the cave not too far away, and asked Jian Chen, "Yang Yutian, do you know what's happening inside the cave?" Hearing that, Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows, before looking at the people rather impatiently. He said coldly, "Leave here immediately, or I can only offend you." Before the people had left, Jian Chen could not enter the cave no matter what, because the barrier inside was just too difficult to explain. Also, he could not allow for any part of the White Tiger's identity to leak out. Jian Chen's rudeness caused the people's expressions to change slightly. Kara Liwei was affected in particular. As the special first young lady of the clan, she was never spoken to in such a way. "Yang Yutian, it's us who first discovered this cave. Are we not even allowed to stay and have a look inside?" Kara Liwei said rather unhappily. Unconcealed anger welled in her alluring face. If it was another Radiant Saint Master who spoke to her like that, she would definitely not have held back, but thinking of how terrifying and how strong Jian Chen was, as well as the fact that it was extremely possible that he could become the future president of the Union, Kara Liwei could only control herself. The presence within the cave increased constantly, while Jian Chen could clearly feel that the energy inside was becoming more and more unstable. It made Jian Chen rather anxious. "People of the Kara clan, since you're unwilling to leave, I can only move against you all," Jian Chen called out coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding Radiant Saint force rushed wildly towards Jian Chen. With a finger pointing at the sky, he bellowed, "Judgment's sword." In order to avoid wasting any time, Jian Chen could not care any more, even if it meant offending the Kara clan. Judgment Sword, one of the 3 great arts. Yang Yutian, Kara Liwei's expression immediately changed greatly. She had never thought Yang Yutian would actually move against them, much less use one of the 3 great radiant arts immediately, as if he bared a huge grudge towards the Kara clan or something. Kara Liwei was clearly angered very much. In her opinion, Yang Yutian was rude and unreasonable. As the first young lady of the Kara clan, he possessed a great status, yet she had already spoken to him in such a humble manner. However, he did not appreciate it, and instead wanted to start fighting just because she said displeasing. Kara Liwei gritted her teeth and glared viciously at Jian Chen with her beautiful eyes. She felt like her chest was about to burst from anger, but seeing the sword quickly condensing above Jian Chen, her complexion then became ugly. The whole situation had already developed to a point where she knew they would really have to clash with Yang Yutian if her group stayed for any longer. Yang Yutian, stop right now. We'll leave immediately. Kara Liwei's beautiful face had already become ghastly pale from anger. After signaling all the people, she left immediately, disappearing into the distance. With their departure, the sword above Jian Chen also slowly dispersed. Unless he had to, he did not want to offend the Kara clan so easily. He was fearful of the clan, and he worried for the Qin Huang kingdom. After watching Kara Liwei's group depart, Jian Chen entered the cave in a flash, passing through the barrier without any obstruction. Kara Liwei's group stopped 25 kilometers away. Currently, all their complexions were ghastly, all sheet white from resentment. This Yang Yutian has gone too far. He actually treat us like this. Does he want to become enemies with our Kara clan? A middle-aged man said angrily. This Yang Yutian is just too arrogant and harsh. Just because he has impressive talent and is very likely to become the next president, does he intend on looking down on our Kara clan? A ruddy old man was also quite angry, speaking with a resentful tone. It'll clearly be extremely difficult to work with this Yang Yutian since he's so arrogant and unreasonable. Miss, what do you think we should do? Another middle-aged man asked. Chapter 769. Trembling of the Saint Artifact. Kara Liwei sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed down. What happened before slowly flashed through her head, from when Jian Chen hurried over from the distance to everything that had occurred when he had arrived. She slowly discovered something rather strange. Have you realized that when Yang Yutian first appeared, he traveled directly for the cave, and did not hurry over because we were there, as if the mysterious cave was his target instead of us? Also, in the end, he wanted us to leave immediately, perhaps to get us to leave the cave. If we did not leave, he was even ready to chase us, members of the Kara clan, away as enemies. It's obvious that he discovered something important in the cave and he doesn't want us to know. Kara Liwei was a clever and quick-witted person. Now that she was calm, she thought of the crucial points very quickly. Hearing that, a gleam of light immediately flashed across the eyes of the 6 other Radiant Saint Masters, as if they too had reached an understanding. A person spoke out immediately, with Miss putting it like that, I feel that it's just as you've described. Yang Yutian only wanted us to leave the cave. Perhaps there's some secret hidden within the cave? From the presence, I already felt that it was a Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough. Also, there's rumors outside that Yang Yutian has an extremely cute, snow-white beast cub that he brings everywhere. Perhaps the Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough is that beast cub Yang Yutian carries around? A middle-aged man asked in thought. If the magical beast is indeed the beast cub that accompanies Yang Yutian, why was he so hurried? Even if the cub holds great importance to him, he doesn't need to risk offending the Kara clan by chasing us away. You're right. And what was that barrier in the cave about? The group from the Kara clan began analyzing it through discussion. However, the result of the discussion slowly formed. Instead of answering their questions, it instead made them even more doubtful. Kara Liwei stood silently to one side, while light flickered in her eyes. She also seemed to be thinking about those questions. A while later, she began speaking unhurriedly. No matter what, this Yang Yutian definitely has some things he doesn't want us to see. Also, I've examined that cave. It was cut open recently. It's extremely possible that he created the cave. As for the barrier, perhaps a saint ruler left a sliver of barrier energy in Yang Yutian's body, allowing him to be able to cast down a barrier? In Kara Liwei's mind, she could not help but think of Jian Chen's handsome and resolute face, Jian Chen's cold gaze, as well as his ability to be able to kill without hesitation and attack viciously. These expressions and manners would only appear on fighters who had weathered the wind and rain, spending many years traveling around the continent, people who had their hands dyed with blood. It rarely ever appeared on a Radiant Saint Master, much less a 24-year-old Radiant Saint Master. These various factors even would make Carolee Wei doubt sometimes whether Yang Yutian was a Radiant Saint Master or not. Just what type of person is this Yang Yutian? Why I do feel that he's unlike a Radiant Saint Master, and more similar to a fighter? Carolee Wei was filled with curiosity. These were all changes that occurred to Jianchen without him knowing after he arrived in the artifact space. With all the killing and slaughtering, it was as if Jianchen had returned to his days of roaming the continent, silently changing Jianchen's temperament. It activated his nature hidden deep within without any sound, which was why Jianchen had caused Carolee Wei to feel this way. Let's not offend Yang Yutian. I feel like this Yang Yutian isn't as simple as he seems, Carolee Wei said gently, before slowly traveling into the distance. Inside the cave, the white tiger was currently encased in a 3-meter-wide cocoon. The white cocoon glowed with dazzling light, scattering over the entire cave. Within it, a much more powerful energy fluctuated in an extremely unstable manner. Jianchen sat cross-legged 5 meters away, staring fixedly at the huge, white cocoon. He had thrown the Class 6 magical beast he had killed beside the cocoon, where strands of red gas floated from the blood, absorbed into the huge white cocoon. After absorbing the vital energies from the blood, the energy within the white cocoon became even more violent. At the same time, the presence it gave off became even stronger, extending from the initial dozen of kilometers to hundreds. Just how much more time does the white tiger need to break through? A sliver of concern appeared on Jianchen's face. He could feel that the energy within the cocoon was currently changing in quality. The vital energies in the blood of magical beasts was nourishment that could allow the white tiger to convert the energy faster, but the quantity of vital energies required was just too much. Jianchen just did not have the time to hunt enough Class 6 magical beasts it would require. But without the vital energies, the amount of time the white tiger needed for the breakthrough would not change. Jianchen just did not have the time to remain in the Saint Artifact and wait for the white tiger to break through. The blood of magical beasts can decrease Xiaobai's breakthrough time, and the blood from my chaotic body is clearly much more powerful than the blood of magical beasts. If I use my own blood, perhaps the effect will be much stronger than magical beast blood? Jianchen mumbled to himself, before a determined light appeared in his eyes. Immediately, a strand of azulate sword chi appeared on his finger. With a swing of his hand, it cut towards his wrist. However, just as the sword chi struck Jianchen's wrist, it left behind a faint, white mark. The azulate sword chi was unable to break through Jianchen's chaotic body. Jianchen stared blankly for a little, before immediately gathering the chaotic force within his body into his Dantian's chaotic Niden. It lowered his defense to as low as he could drop it. Then he used the origin energy of the sword spirits to cut at his wrist again. This time, the wrist was indeed cut open, but it was only a wound less than an inch long. Before blood could even float out, the wound actually healed itself. This bloody chaotic body. Jianchen could not help himself and swore aloud. Only now did he discover that having an overly tough body was not necessarily good. With a flip of his hand, he directly removed the ruler armament taken away from the great elders of the Hongfu clan from his space ring, the dragon-slaying sword. Surging saint force immediately poured into the sword, which caused the sword's dark light to glow brightly. Afterwards, he swung it viciously towards his left wrist. Immediately, a deep wound formed on the wrist, where bright red blood immediately began to spurt out. Immediately, Jianchen placed his hand on the white cocoon around the tiger, offering up the blood from the wrist for the white tiger to absorb. Jianchen's blood disappeared into the cocoon as soon as it landed on it. With that, the energy in the cocoon also became even more powerful. Jianchen could clearly feel that after absorbing his blood, the energy in the white tiger began to be converted at an extremely fast rate, while also increasing in power. The blood from my chaotic body should be extremely helpful to the tiger, Jianchen thought. Meanwhile, the blood at his wrist flowed without any signs of stopping, all being absorbed by the white tiger. However, Chaotic Body's recovery rate was just too great. In just 3 seconds, the wound on Jian Chen's wrist healed, returning to how it was before. With nothing else to do, Jian Chen used the ruler armament to cut his wrist once again, using his own blood as nourishment as a way to increase the white tiger's breakthrough speed. As Jian Chen's blood was absorbed by the tiger's presence became more and more powerful. The vast presence was hegemonic, as if a ruler was slowly waking from his sleep, while the radius covered by the presence exceeded the hundreds, reaching into several thousand kilometers, alerting many competitors. All the magical beasts in the area covered also seemed to be greatly frightened, including Class 6 magical beasts. All of them lay on the ground, trembling, while their eyes were filled with horror, as if they had been greatly terrified. 50 kilometers away, Kara Liwei's group all stopped, each looking in the direction of the presence in shock. A Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough can actually give off such a vast presence, and this presence seems to be filled with dominance. This is definitely a king beast from a powerful background. An old man said with a deep voice, while he displayed an unconcealed expression of envy. Perhaps the beast cub accompanying Jian Chen is a beast of antiquity? Kara Liwei's eyes flickered with a light as she muttered with a soft voice. Thousands of kilometers away, over 20 Radiant Saint Masters were currently battling 3 Class 6 magical beasts in a group. Suddenly, a vast presence appeared from the distance, enveloping the whole region. With its sudden arrival, the 3 magical beasts shook violently, their eyes immediately filling with extreme levels of terror. They seemed to be greatly terrified, and with a mournful cry, they no longer wanted to battle, fleeing the area with their greatest speed. The Radiant Saint Masters did not pursue the beasts. Instead, they all looked towards the origin of the presence, while their gazes were filled with surprise. This should be the presence from a magical beast. I can clearly feel that the presence is filled with absolute hegemony. Looks like this beast's background is definitely something else, at least a king beast. An old man said with a deep voice. He was the leading Radiant Saint Master from the Tsar family, Zartilos. This presence isn't too powerful, it should only be a magical beast breaking through to Class 6, but it's enough to scare away the 3 Class 6 magical beasts, as well as cause fear in the beasts. This cannot be achieved by a simple king beast. I'd say it's a beast of antiquity that's just broken through. An elegant middle-aged man said. He was Yun Tian, the second disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union president. A beast of antiquity? Who would have thought that we'd find a beast of antiquity here? Zartilos mumbled. He was excited, with burning greed in his eyes. This beast of antiquity's only just broken through. It shouldn't be too strong. Elder Zartilos, if we take this beast back and offer it up to the ancestor will definitely be extremely happy, a Radiant Saint Master of the Tsar family said excitedly. Zartilos's eyes immediately began to glow. He laughed aloud. Correct. If we bring this beast back and offer it up to the ancestor, it'll be a great deed. Let's go and capture that beast for the clan. At the same time, there was a sealed forest in a remote region within the artifact space. In the center of the forest stood a lone wooden hut, which was covered with marks left behind by time. Inside the hut, a bare-chested, middle-aged man sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. Suddenly the man snapped his eyes, and 2 lightning bolts that seemed tangible shot out. It pierced 2 holes in the hut. What is this presence, actually making me shudder with fear? The man stood up, while his gaze was filled with shock. Afterwards, his body disappeared from the hut without a sound, appearing once again at the edge of the small forest. Before him, a powerful energy separated the surrounding space and formed a barrier, blocking the man's steps. The man stood before the seal, staring fixedly at the empty space in the distance with a light of great shock in his eyes. His eyebrows were furrowed deeply, while he revealed an expression of thought. Suddenly, the middle-aged man seemed to find something in his ancient inherited memories. His expression immediately changed greatly, and he cried out without any control, "The winged tiger god, it's the presence of the winged tiger god." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.